From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. I'm Ben Leo, standing in for Martin today, who's enjoying his well-deserved holidays. A heavily pregnant woman and her unborn baby have died after a crash involving an unmarked police car in London. We'll be live from the scene with the latest updates. Sir Keir Starmer has arrived in Berlin as he's meeting with world leaders to discuss developments in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine. We'll be crossing live to Germany for the PM's live speech in just under an hour's time. Back home, inheritance tax, school tax, stamp duty, national insurance, it's all up for grabs as Chancellor Rachel Reeves eyes them all up for what could be the biggest tax raid ever as we edge closer to a nightmare Halloween budget. Meanwhile, Republicans are outraged as Labour sends 100 staff to help Kamala Harris win the US presidential election. Is this, as some have suggested, direct election interference by Sir Keir Starmer's party? Nigel Farage and Elon Musk think so, calling it diplomatically stupid. And, by the way, who's paying for it all? And last night was the night. Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick appeared for the first time together on national television here on GB News. And as Tory members begin to vote for their new leader, who do you think came out on top? And was One Direction star Liam Payne badly let down by the music industry? Sharon Osbourne has spoken out, and we'll speak to one former X Factor contestant for their thoughts too. And as ever, I'm all on my own in this chilly Westminster studio, so I want to hear from you to keep me company. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. It's going to be a jam-packed 3 hours, but first, your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 3 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. Alex Salmond's body has returned to Aberdeen from North Macedonia following his death at a conference on Saturday. The former First Minister passed away from a heart attack in Ohrid, and his body was flown back this afternoon on a chartered flight arranged by businessman Sir Tom Hunter. Upon arrival, Mr Salmond's coffin was draped in a saltire and received by family and Alba Party acting leader Kenny McCaskill. Plans are underway for a private family funeral and a public memorial service to honour his life, with the family requesting privacy during this time. A Downing Street spokeswoman expressed the Prime Minister's condolences and urged respect for the family's wishes. Now, the Prime Minister is in Germany today for a meeting of Quad leaders. Sir Keir Starmer travelled to Berlin to meet with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, US President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron. They are set to discuss developments in the Middle East and also the war in Ukraine. In other news, a heavily pregnant woman and her unborn baby have died after a collision with an unmarked police car in south-east London. The incident happened at around 6:15 last night. It's unclear if the police vehicle was responding to an emergency at the time, which is now a key focus of the ongoing investigation. 2 officers in the police car were taken to hospital but have since been discharged, and a road closure remains in place as inquiries continue. Barristers representing the Harrods survivors group have commended the horrible and monstrous abuse at the hands of Mohammed Al-Fayed after a report in the Athletics exposed new allegations at Fulham Football Club. Dean Armstrong, KC, and his team praised the bravery of former Fulham women's captain Ronnie Gibbons, who accused the billionaire of sexual assault during her time at the club, aged 20. Her claims are part of a wider investigation by the Metropolitan Police into 40 new allegations of sexual misconduct against Al-Fayed. Investigators are pledging to uncover further abuses and hold those involved accountable. Niall Horan has paid tribute to his former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne, saying he'll cherish every moment they shared. Horan's emotional Instagram post came after Liam died at the age of 31, falling from a 3rd-floor balcony in Buenos Aires. Horan sent love to Payne's family, including his son Bear, signing off with "Love you, brother." A post-mortem confirmed multiple traumas from the fall, with police describing Payne's hotel room as in complete disarray. Other musicians and fans have been remembering Liam's infectious energy with a candlelit vigil held in Argentina. Now, Israel's year-long war with Hamas took a dramatic turn yesterday as the IDF killed Yahya Sinwar, the militant group's leader and mastermind behind last year's attacks. Unaware of his identity at the first time, IDF forces stumbled across Sinwar during a Gaza operation, taking out Israel's most wanted man. While Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a major blow to Hamas, he warned the fight is far from over. Talks between Netanyahu and President Biden are currently focused on using this moment to free hostages and end the conflict. But Iran says the killing will strengthen resistance. Meanwhile, Hezbollah in Lebanon has vowed to escalate its conflict with Israel. And King Charles and Queen Camilla have touched down in Australia for a historic royal tour. The couple landed in Sydney, greeted with a warm welcome and a bouquet of flowers for the Queen. It's His Majesty's first trip to Australia as king and his first official overseas trip since being diagnosed with cancer earlier this year. They'll spend 6 days touring Canberra and Sydney before heading to Samoa for a state visit and a Commonwealth summit, which Charles will formally open. Their tour schedule has been scaled back on doctor's advice, with a New Zealand visit cancelled. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sophia, and welcome back. Ben Leo in for Martin Daubney this afternoon. It's 3:07. Now, some breaking news from earlier this afternoon. A heavily pregnant woman and her unborn child have died following a crash involving an unmarked police car in London. The 38-year-old and her child sadly died as a result of their injuries. GB News national reporter Charlie Peters is at the scene for us now. Good afternoon, Charlie. Really tragic news, heart-wrenching. What's the latest, please? What's going on at the scene?
Afternoon, Ben. Well, I've just spoken to a witness who saw the crash occurring yesterday evening just after 6:15. We have now some more details about what occurred. Previously in the Metropolitan Police statement, it was unclear if that unmarked car was pursuing a criminal or attending to a scene. but in footage I've now seen, there were sirens blazing on that vehicle. And now this witness told me that the car was travelling up to 90 miles per hour as it collided with the woman's car as she turned into the leisure centre just behind me in south-east London, at the junction between the Red Brick Road and the A20. Now, it's said that the woman was making the turning with her husband and another child, understood to be her daughter, waiting to be picked up at the leisure centre. That's what the witness said. He then saw the crash and ran out to try and support her. Now, the witness said that there were some 4 police cars, all Volvos, travelling with their sirens blazing down the road, also supported by, he said, 3 to 4 motorbikes. And the footage that I've seen of the incident in the moments after it happened, just the police car that hit the woman's car stayed behind, along with 2 other bikes to support the scene. But the other vehicles continued motoring away to attend whatever emergency they were called to. This witness described seeing the car, he said, flip up to 3 times before it landed about 10 metres further down the road. One wheel is missing. The woman and her unborn child, the police said, died here after that incident. There was a significant emergency response. In footage I've seen by another witness, there were around 9 ambulances here, also several trucks from the London Fire Brigade attending the scene. The Met said in a statement this morning that the London Air Ambulance also attended this location. Footage I've seen taken by a local resident shows that one of the vehicles afterwards, I understand it to be the police Volvo, had its roof removed. I understand also by the London Fire Brigade, a standard tactic and procedure to access injured persons during a road traffic accident. Now, this witness, a 34-year-old delivery driver who saw the incident happen, told me that one of the police officers, a passenger, was hobbling to get out, but the driver was stuck inside. The woman, who was attended to up to 20 minutes later by an ambulance following that crash. And as I said, he said it flipped some 3 times before landing on the side of the road. Some emotional tributes have been left behind, but the road is now clear.
Charlie Peters on the scene in south-east London. Thank you. I don't know what to say, an awful story breaking this afternoon. That poor family, the woman, her unborn child, as we understand, the child who is left now without their mother, the father, just grim. And our thoughts are with them this afternoon. Thanks, Charlie. OK, Sir Keir Starmer is in Germany as he's set to discuss the Middle East and the war in Ukraine with world leaders, including US President Joe Biden. We're going to hear from him live in just under half an hour. But the PM's got some more trouble at home as a backlash grows against what's expected to be a real nightmare of a Halloween budget in just a few weeks' time. It could be the biggest tax raid in history as Chancellor Rachel Reeves plans to raise inheritance tax to generate up to £35 billion and, reported today, increase stamp duty while cutting benefits. So the question begs, is this a war on families? Joining me now is GB News political editor Chris Hope. Hello, Chris. Thank you for joining me. Is this a war on families? It certainly seems like it's shaping up that way, if indeed that's how it manifests, the budget.
Hi, Ben. Great to see you here in Westminster. That's certainly not how the government would say it. I mean, they're looking at £40 billion worth of tax rises and spending cuts in the October 30th budget, now barely 2 weeks away, not even that actually. Increases to inheritance tax, fuel duty, levies on e-cigarettes. They're looking at, what's interesting is the balance in tax and spend. It looks like the tax hikes will be a lot more than the spending cuts. The mooted figures today of £3 billion cuts in welfare by reforming work capability rules. Now, to put that in context, the Tories before the election were looking at cutting £12 billion off the welfare bill. If Labour just does £3 billion, that might barely scratch the surface of what will be a very big bill by the end of this decade. Currently £39 billion on disability benefits spent by this country, going to £58 billion by the next election. So £3 billion is not a lot off that. So part of the politics is about choices. This government has chosen to withdraw benefits from pensioners worried about the cold this winter. They're choosing here not to go after the benefits bill as much as tax rises, it looks like. On reports, of course, we are a long way. We're still 12 days out from the budget. Long way to go.
Yeah, it is about choices, and lots of our viewers would say, well, hang on, you need to find a couple of quid. Why don't you cut the climate budget, the foreign climate budget, £11 billion to Africa? Why don't you maybe scale back on this carbon capture scheme, which has been widely slammed by eco-zealots and sceptics alike. But this budget isn't just causing concern for Brits, is it, Chopper? There seems to be some sort of civil war brewing internally between Labour ministers.
Yeah, but the heads of these departments, led by, we understand, Angela Rayner and others, Louise Haigh, Transport Secretary, Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, untouchable, has been elected by the members, can't be sacked. She's also the Housing Secretary, Local Government Secretary. They are understood to have written to Sir Keir Starmer over the head of Rachel Reeves, gone to the boss, not the number two, protesting about the scale of these cuts. There's going to be I think this entire budget, October 30th, is overshadowing all of politics at the moment. For me, a mistake by the government not to have this budget back in July, straight away, get it done. I feel like we're still in the prologue stage or the trailers before the movie. And the movie is when this government starts after October 30th.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a PG X-rated movie, a Halloween nightmare, so we wait and see.
It's not you, anyway.
No, definitely not you. Joining me now is economics expert Justin Urquhart-Stewart. It says here his cat. Justin, is your cat with you? That's the most important question of the day.
Well, she's an expert in economy. Knows all about the cost of food, particularly the kitty cat.
Ah, very good. I like how you've weaseled that one in. Look, Justin, there's talks of changes to capital gains tax, increasing the rate, inheritance tax, reports earlier about stamp duty being meddled with as well that would bump an extra $2,500 onto house purchases from March, if indeed that is when it's introduced. Some saying that, you know, this is a government and politics of envy. Why are you going after aspirational people who are risking their money, certainly in terms of capital gains tax, using money for investments that's already been taxed with income tax?
It is ridiculous, isn't it? You know, the people who actually take risks, actually maybe put their house in the market, sell assets in order to set up a business, take the risk of doing so. Maybe it's going to fail, there's no guarantee to it. And they will be, if they are successful, a lot of them will be, they pay tax on that success. And here we are then saying, well, you're going to pay more tax on top of that. That's the wrong way to try and run an economy. There's one word that an economy needs, it's confidence. And as you were just saying, if we'd had the budget back in July, we wouldn't have had several months of seeping confidence as people wonder very concerned about how nasty this budget's going to be. And basically, we've talked ourselves into, as led by the government, that it's not going to be good news. What you want to be able to do is actually say, yes, you're right, we're going to have to actually pay more. Unfortunately, they've shut off the three major tax areas, which are VAT, income tax, and part of national insurance, so that's likely to change. All the other taxes are relatively small. You're tinkering at the edges. If you really want to try and actually get more money off the wealthy, do them a deal. Actually make sure we do something whereby we're actually going to ask you for a 5-year period to actually pay more tax. And for what you're going to get for it is we'll give you a relief on, say, inheritance tax, some benefit further on to be able to make sure that actually they're getting the risk, but they're also getting some reward for it as well.
Yeah. OK, Justin, Chopper's here with a question of his own. Chopper.
Justin, I wonder what you were seeing with your experience of clients in the city. Are any of them moving money away from the country, selling up shares, worried about the CGT bill, capital gains tax bill? What kind of activity are you seeing on the front line of the financial markets?
Well, what you're seeing, certainly from private clients, is people saying, well, I don't have the confidence to invest at the moment, so my money's staying where it is. People from outside the country, again, no confidence. I'm not going to invest in Britain until I can see exactly how good this is going to be. Our reputation over the past few years, particularly with regard to, say, the trust fiasco, have become overseas investors looked and said, I don't trust you yet. I know you're not going to go bust, but I'm afraid I don't trust you in terms of growing that economy. If they can actually give some enthusiasm and say to people, look, actually, we're still the 6th largest economy in the world. Remarkably, we're still growing. We have some success areas in technology. Don't put more government money into it. Actually give more tax breaks, like enterprise investment schemes, maybe on a regional basis, so it encourages people to take risks, to invest, and that's how you get more money being put into the system. Government gets more money, and more importantly, the economy starts growing.
Yeah. Justin, thank you very much. There's an interesting article in The Telegraph today from Fraser Nelson saying an exodus of millionaires is already underway and Britain will be poorer for it. The facts are that the top 1% of taxpayers in this country cover 30% of the tax bill. So I'm not too sure what Labour think will happen when they bump up things such as capital gains tax. I know lots of people who have suggested, do you know what? If I'm going to be paying much more capital gains tax on money that I've risked myself, which, again, I stress, has already been taxed on income tax, I may as well just move to Dubai or somewhere where there's no capital gains tax and also the sun's out most of the time. I won't have to deal with the miserable British weather. But, Justin, thank you very much. And goodbye to your cat. What's your cat's name?
Mrs. Boo, not very good at economics most of the time, much happier just having a kid.
Oh, yeah, great. Good stuff. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
OK, moving on. The Tory leadership candidates Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch battled it out last night at a bombshell GB News event. Did you see it? Chopper, you chaired the event. Sterling work, first of all. And it was fascinating, wasn't it? Because I finished watching it thinking, I'm not sure who the winner is, other than perhaps Reform. Because on one hand, you've got Robert Jenrick saying that he'll leave the ECHR. But the problem with that, I concluded, was that half the party are what I would describe, not your words, but Lib Dems in disguise, and they just won't go along with that. So he's talking about unification, stopping the drama, but pursuing that ECHR route, arguably...
Could divide the party on day one.
Exactly. And then Kemi Badenoch, I don't really see the appeal. I know our audience did. They were heavily in favour of her last night. But she potentially has got One Nation vibe. So, again, I'm not sure where the unification is going to come from.
And great points there, Ben. I mean, that's right. I mean, you've got this suite of policies from Robert Jenrick trying to carpet bomb the voters who are voting, the Tory members. Ballot papers went out on Tuesday. They're opening them now. They're on the doormat now through the post or this weekend. Voting is happening this weekend. I expect this contest to be over by about Tuesday, probably, even though the voting closes and it won't be announced till the 2nd of November. I think by then it's going to be all over. You've got two choices here, principles against policies. Policies from Jenrick being very clear on all sorts of areas, but those areas are an immediately divisive issue. It may be he'll come, if he wins, on day two he'll say we're going to start work on leaving the ECHR and how it will happen. What will moderate Tory MPs think of it? Only about a third of MPs voted for each of these candidates. They've got to unite the party. Kemi Badenoch is saying, back me on principle alone, I'll get you there, and just trust me, even though trust was the one thing which cost the party the election in July. But you heard earlier, I thought there were two moments, I think, last night. The first one from Kemi Badenoch, when she was asked about the issue of slavery reparations and our country's imperial past, and the answer was fascinating.
We don't need to be embarrassed about our colonial past. Every country in the world, at one point or another, either colonised or attempted to colonise another group of people. This is the past. We need to talk about the future. There are many countries now who want to use guilt to try and exploit the UK. They ask for reparations. These arguments are a scam. Don't fall for it. We need to make sure that we put this country first. We work well with our neighbours, we work well with other countries, but we have to look after ourselves too.
I think that what I find interesting, and the scales fell off my eyes slightly, was that you got a black woman here, born outside the UK, telling a mainly white Tory party, stop being embarrassed about your country. Don't worry about it. Ignore what the left are saying about it. You're OK. You're doing your best. You know, there's this kind of shaming culture from the left, which is in our media, which I think really annoys Tory grassroots, and I think they respond to that from Kemi Badenoch. Again, it's a vibe, a feeling, no real policies. In fact, the only policy we got from her last night was with reversing the VAT on private school bills and opposing pylons over the land in parts of the country. Robert Jenrick, though, was much clearer on his offer, and here's what he had to say.
Another clear choice. It's a cap or no cap, and I'm for capping migration. Two clear choices, leave or remain, cap or no cap. I'm for leave, I'm for capping migration.
There you have it, that choice there on illegal and legal migration. He's saying he's going to cap it and deal to low thousands, frankly, on legal migration. How do you get there without all the dramas of the NHS and care workers saying we need more staff? And then, of course, illegal migration, leave the ECHR and we'll deal with the issue. So a big choice there. Policies against principles for members this weekend. Yeah, and the problem is, Chopper, Tory members would say, that's fine, I like the sound of your promises, Robert Jenrick, but the trust just isn't there. How can we believe it? I heard the tens of thousands back in Cameron's day. Yes, well, they went through 4 elections since then, not the tens of thousands number, but at least reducing it. Instead, they built it up under Boris Johnson, by the way. I mean, the people who's praised by so many Brexiteers, he was the person who increased net migration. Often forgotten about, indeed. Chopper, great work last night. Thank you for being with me. Appreciate it. Right, a bit of a gear change now. Time is ticking on your chance to win £36,000 in cash in our Great British giveaway, and there's just 2 weeks remaining to get your entry in. Make sure you don't miss out. Here's all the details you need to win.
Good luck.
All right, very good luck to you on that front. Still to come, I'll be speaking to music industry veteran Nick Stewart, who signed the likes of O2, no less, as to whether One Direction singer Liam Payne, U2 rather, not O2, sorry, thinking of the music venue in London, U2, of course, who will be speaking about whether One Direction singer Liam Payne could have been given more support in the wake of his tragic death. I'm Ben Leo, standing in for Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Right, up and down the country, many parents are preparing or have indeed already sent their child off to university.
Indeed, but sometimes it can leave parents struggling to cope with the, quote, empty nest syndrome their child leaves behind. So joining us now to discuss how to cope with sending off your sprogs to university, or not so sprogs, is broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy. Nice to see you this early. This is a real thing, isn't it? It's our colleague Paul Coitz, our sports expert, describes it as grief, sending your young adults off to uni and leaving the nest for the first time.
Yes, I think grief is the right word because it's an ending. And it's not just an ending with your relationship with your child. It changes from here on in. But it also is very much about your identity. Your identity as a parent is weakening. You'll always be that child's parent, but you're not going to have the same involvement on a daily basis. And so you're left to think, OK, well, what does my life look like going forward? What's my relationship? If you're in a relationship with a partner, how is that going to change? And like all elements of grief, there's going to be a bit of a process. There's going to be that transition period where you adjust to your new life, just as your sprogs, as you call them, are adjusting to their new, exciting phase of their life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Ben Leo in for Martin Daubney this afternoon on GB News. Now, former X Factor judge Sharon Osbourne claims the music industry let Liam Payne down after the One Direction star fell to his death from a hotel balcony in Argentina, aged just 31. Joining me now is music producer Nick Stewart, who has managed and signed the likes of U2. Good afternoon, Nick. Thank you for joining me.
Pleasure to be here, Ben.
Look, a real tragic story. I was, when I woke up on, was it Thursday morning and heard the news, I was pretty upset. I wasn't a massive 1D fan, but his age, the fact that he's got a young child, a 7-year-old who he leaves behind, and actually it also proved once again, we always knew, having money and the fame and the freedom to do, frankly, whatever the hell you want, doesn't kind of allow you to escape from the demons that can torment most of us.
Very neatly put. Extreme fame is something that has afflicted stars going all the way back to Marilyn Monroe in the film business. Jimi Hendrix, when he was young, and so on. The terrible tragedy of this is that he was let go by his record company who felt he wasn't going to achieve what they expected of him. The music, it's called the music business for a reason, because it is a business. And I mean, obviously, we're all extremely, sad and about what happened to him. But the fact was that the business is the business, and he wasn't at that time looking like making significant cutting it. So inside every record company, and I've spoken to the major ones today, is somebody who actually is responsible for artist liaison, looking after artist welfare, as well as looking after the staff welfare of the people in the label. And that came as a result of COVID. One senior executive in the business told me this morning, the business needs to do more, and this is an example of what they can do. But managing an artist from his own label, right, when he's in Buenos Aires, that's really the manager's role. So you've got the dual responsibility. You've got the manager and their setup, and then you've got the label and their setup for duty of care.
So, it says there on the screen, on our strap, the music industry, did it let Liam Payne down? In your opinion, did it, or is it just too simplistic?
I think that is too simplistic. I'm desperately sorry this has happened. I'm sure there'll be inquiries made at his label, Universal. Did it impact him to the extent that he created this chaos in his room? I understand there were, drink and various other substances. Reports are coming in. The man was deeply troubled, and unfortunately it ended in tragedy. What exactly the record company could have done in this country, dealing with somebody in Buenos Aires, I'm not completely sure. The general factor is that record companies now, publishing companies, artist managers and all of it, they need to have a better idea of duty of care. And some artists who fly quite close to the sun, and the Icarus factor, if you get my meaning, are not ideally suited. And unfortunately, when they fly very high, which Liam did with One Direction, you've got to remember they were hugely popular for a time, and you've only got to see where Harry Styles has gone and Niall Horan, where the rest of them have gone.
Well, somebody asked me earlier, or brought the point up and said, this is a young, very well-spoken, very sharp and intelligent lad who came from a middle-class family. His dad was an engineer for an aerospace company. He had his head screwed on, but didn't, as we see with a lot of addiction cases with booze and alcohol and whatever else, a lot of the time, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an expert, but you can always trace some kind of trauma behind that, or some kind of incident that they're trying to get away from. But people were looking at Liam Payne and saying, what was the trauma there? What is it about?
Difficult to identify, Ben. I've looked at it this morning and yesterday, and I can't see any specific thing that's happened that's come out. But then,
is there anything about being in a boy band so young that would torment?
I think the young.
What are the pressures like?
The young is the bit. He started off when he was 14. He then came into the band and was 16 and all the rest of it. That's very, very young to be thrust into the spotlight, worked very, very hard. Even the Beatles, when they, in 63, 64, were starting off and they were flying around the world, you've got footage of them and film of them in Manila in the Philippines, and they looked absolutely, agog at what was going on. They were completely unprepared.
How old were the Beatles when they started?
They were all in their early 20s, late teens. Actually, that's a good question. You found the family out there. But they were young, and they'd come out of Liverpool, a very, working-class environment, and they were suddenly huge stars all around the world. There's a very good documentary on the Beatles on their first trip around America and what they got up to. The intense pressure of going into TV studios, performing, interviews, doing the odd show in front of thousands of screaming people, it can affect you. You have to be strong, and you have to need to really want to do it. Did you at some point decide, I just don't want to do this anymore?
And I guess we'll be getting into the realms of speculation now by suggesting this, but do you think perhaps there could have been a moment when he was looking at his situation where he's been dropped by his record company?
Yes.
He looks to his friends from the band.
Yes.
Harry Styles is flying high.
Yep.
He was visiting Niall Horan in Argentina doing a concert. Do you think maybe that?
Yes, I'm sure you've identified several factors that could be in play here. But to answer your question, did the music business let him down? I think one must be very careful before accusing them. And just, I know it's not the same at all, but just imagine if you're the person that let him go from the label, how you're feeling.
Gosh, yeah.
OK, so I think there has to be a balance here. I'm desperately sorry it happened. He's one of a great number of people who have lost their lives to this fame game, and it's terrible.
Jimi Hendrix, we were just speaking off there.
Jim Morrison,
he was, what, 27?
27, the 27 Club, Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, quite a lot of them.
Yeah, it's desperately sad. And there was a piece earlier, I think it was The Times or The Telegraph, saying that even having a child with Cheryl Cole couldn't kind of, tame his ways and bring him back
and she was quite a bit older than he was. And then, of course, he had another relationship with Naomi Campbell, who was a lot older than she was. I mean, he lived high, let's just say high on the... I used the Icarus factor a moment ago. He was... it's a very, very sad story.
And just very quickly, we're running out of time. Do you think One Direction would ever get back together in light of this?
I think at this point that would be inappropriate for me to comment on that, and I would suggest no.
No, OK. All right, Nick, thank you very much. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
Lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including, get this, almost 400,000 migrants have been let into the country since 2021 without a basic criminal record check. Could you imagine that happening in the likes of the US or Australia, in the Middle East, in the UAE? Do you know who walks among us, I wonder? But first, your latest news headlines with Sophia Wednesday.
Ben, thank you. It's 3:35. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is in Germany today for a meeting of Quad leaders. Sir Keir Starmer travelled to Berlin to meet with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, US President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron. They're set to discuss developments in the Middle East and also the war in Ukraine. Now, back in the UK, a heavily pregnant woman and her unborn baby have died after a collision with an unmarked police car in south-east London. The incident happened at around 6:15 last night. It's unclear if the police vehicle was responding to an emergency at the time, which is now a key focus of the ongoing investigation. 2 officers in the police car were taken to hospital but have since been discharged, and a road closure remains in place as inquiries continue. The Independent Office for Police Conduct is now appealing for witnesses as they investigate the circumstances surrounding the fatal collision. In other news, Israel's year-long war with Hamas took a dramatic turn yesterday as the IDF killed Yahya Sinwar, the militant group's leader and mastermind behind last year's attacks. Unaware of his identity at first, IDF forces stumbled across Sinwar during a Gaza operation, taking out Israel's most wanted man. While Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a major blow to Hamas, he warned the fight is far from over. Talks between Netanyahu and President Biden are currently focused on using this moment to free hostages and end the conflict. But Iran says the killing will strengthen resistance. Meanwhile, Hezbollah in Lebanon has vowed to escalate its conflict with Israel. And Niall Horan has paid tribute to his former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne, saying he'll cherish every moment they shared. Horan's emotional Instagram post came after Liam died at the age of 31, falling from a third-floor balcony in Buenos Aires. Horan sent love to Payne's family, including his son Bear, signing off with "Love you, brother." A post-mortem confirmed multiple traumas from the fall, with police describing Payne's hotel room as in complete disarray. Other musicians and fans have been remembering Liam's infectious energy with a candlelit visual held in Argentina. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3044 and €1.2014. The price of gold is £2,083.40 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,317 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. For the rest of today, it's fine in the east, but turning wetter in the west, and it's increasingly windy, although not as windy as we're expecting on Sunday because of Storm Ashley. That's developing in the Atlantic at the moment, and it deepens rapidly as it heads towards the UK during Saturday and into Saturday night. Ahead of that, there's some strong winds across the west and northwest associated with a band of heavy rain that by evening ends up across western England and Wales. It also turns cloudy and damp overnight in the east of England, but the rain clears Scotland and Northern Ireland, where winds will fall lighter and temperatures will dip into the mid to low single figures. Elsewhere, a milder night to come because of the cloud and rain that we start the day with across the southeast, the Midlands, and eastern England. The rain heavy at times and fairly slow moving, so it's a bit of a damp start here. But for Wales and the southwest, as well as for parts of northern England, a brighter start to the day, some sunshine, a patchy cloud around for Northern Ireland as well as Scotland, and a few showers starting to move in from the west. But eastern Scotland and the far north, largely clear skies. Now, it may take until the middle of the afternoon for eastern England to dry up and indeed brighten up. But elsewhere across the UK, once the rain's cleared through, it's sunny spells and a few showers. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England and Wales most likely to see those showers. But in between, with relatively light winds and some decent sunny spells, a pleasant enough day, even in the east of England, late afternoon once that rain clears. And any showers that do form will fade away overnight with clear spells, at least for the first half of Saturday night. Then Storm Ashley turns up, bringing the risk of considerable impacts, especially in the northwest of Scotland, with wind gusts of 80 miles an hour.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. South Yorkshire on the M1 heading northbound around Sheffield and Worksop Junction 31. Still queuing back towards Junction 30. Patchy queues follows an early accident there, but it's all cleared up now, but delays quite haven't yet. A45 in Northampton. Now it's currently closed both ways. No way through between the Great Billing interchange and the Grendon-Nilsbarton turn-off. That's causing serious queues. There's a collision there being dealt with, so congestion to the Barnes Meadow interchange eastbound, and there will be way roundabout on the westbound side too. Westbound M4 in South Wales toward Newport, very slow past 24 the Caldera. There was a lane out for a breakdown that cleared about 10 to 2, but it's still queuing. And the eastbound M2, the exit slip coming off at Brenley Corner at 7 is closed, queuing at the scene of a collision.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hello, welcome back. 3:41, Ben Leo covering for Martin Daubney on GB News this afternoon. Now, almost 400,000 migrants arrived in Britain since 2021. Get this, without a basic criminal record check. Despite a spike in offences committed by foreign nationals, only those coming to the UK to work in health or education need to show proof of criminal record certificates. I just said before the break, you wouldn't get this going to America, going to Australia or any other normal country who behaves properly, but for some reason, we do. For more on this, I'm joined now by international security and border control expert Henry Bolton, OBE. Good afternoon.
OK,
Henry,
no, I don't.
Oh, can you hear me, Henry? No? Yes, no?
I can't hear anything, I'm afraid.
No, he can't hear anything. Let's get through some... Well, let me just talk about this story, actually, first, because, look, with illegal migration, the massive concern is the national security risk. We don't know who these people are, what their background is. There was the incident of the chap in, was it Bournemouth, who had killed twice in Serbia before coming to the UK to kill a British lad. I think it was last year or the year before, if my memory serves me correct. He was allowed in. These people coming on small boats throw their passports and their phones in the water. So that's illegal migration. But this bombshell story today from the Sun newspaper talks about legal migration. We're not even doing the basics when it comes to people we've allowed into the country. Almost 400,000 legal migrants have moved to Britain since 2021 without criminal record checks. Campaigners last night were demanding tighter vetting. And that's despite a spike in offences committed by foreign nationals. Only those coming here who are going to be working in the health or education sectors need to show records, criminal record certificates. And it just begs the question, what is wrong with this country when it comes to migration? Not just illegal migration, but legal migration. Why can we not behave like a sensible, right-thinking country? America, Australia, the Middle East, you just wouldn't see it. Of the 500,000 workers given visas between January 2021 and March this year, nearly 250,000 didn't undergo criminal record checks. That's according to research by the Centre for Migration Control. And they estimate 154,000 family members came too, bringing the total without criminal record certificates to more than 391,000. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't know why we can't behave like a normal country and look after our citizens. We are trying to get Henry Bolton back. I think he's having a bit of sound trouble. Let's go to some views in the meantime. Just talking about that Labour story with, well, it was 100 Labour staffers and activists being bussed over to America to campaign for Kamala Harris. We'll get back onto that. We've got Henry Bolton. Henry, hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Tom. Yes, I can. Yes. Don't know what happened there. Thank you.
It's Ben. No problem. I know I look like Tom,
Sorry,
but
Ben.
I am Ben. We share many different views, a polar opposite, I would argue. Look, I've just been asking there, why don't we behave and can't we behave like a normal country? Why do we have 300 to 400,000 people here legally who we've not checked for their criminal backgrounds?
I'll try and answer that simply. Look, the thing is, and I've been trying to warn of this for at least 6-7 years, we have got a border management system that is staffed by people that have an institutional culture. The whole system has an institutional culture of applying process, just procedure, the bureaucracy, if you like, of borders. They're not thinking about why they do this, why we have borders in the first place. You know, if we didn't, you know, the reason we have borders is actually to protect the nation's interests, whether it be in terms of trade, health, public health, criminality, and even military threats and so on. But people have forgotten, people in the system, and the system has forgotten what the purpose of these checks is for. So that's a fundamental problem. And we talk about people, we talk about immigration, and we talk about people, in this particular case, who've not had their criminal records checked. Well, that's just the one threat that is penetrating our borders. All of the cocaine, all of the heroin, 97% of the firearms used in crime in this country are brought across our borders. We've applied bureaucracy up to our borders, but we are not securing our borders. And that's a problem throughout the whole system. And that's why I've argued, as I say, for many years that we need a totally new national strategy, fully comprehensive, fully integrated, to do this. And that's about a whole load of reform. But that's why.
Henry, I mean, you do touch on the war on drugs, which I guess is a separate issue, if not mildly connected. Of course, you know, we've got all the problems on that front. But this is basic, isn't it? When I go to America, they ask if I've ever committed a crime and they check my records. That's just to visit as a tourist, not even to live there. In this case, they are coming to live here in Britain, and we're not bothering to spend, I don't know how long is it going to take to check someone's criminal record. A minute, 5 minutes, we could do it probably with the click of a finger, and we're just not doing it. So who's to blame? Is it the government? Is it the civil service? I mean, what's wrong with us?
As I say, I mean, it's all of the above. It's the entire culture of our borders. Now, how do we solve it? What we need is leadership. We need somebody to say, listen, at the end of the day, our borders are not secure. If they were secure, we wouldn't be seeing this sort of thing happen. We wouldn't see the narcotics come over. We wouldn't see all of these threats penetrate our borders. Our borders are quite clearly, quite obviously, undeniably insecure. They're porous. Now, that is a problem. So what's required is the Home Secretary, the Prime Minister, somebody needs to sit down and say, right, this is simply not good enough. We are failing in protecting the nation's interests, its security interests, its public safety, public health, and so on, because our whole system is flawed. We've got to redesign it. Now, there are people who are capable of doing that. The problem is that within government, people move, in the civil service, people move around so much that the moment they start to get on top of their brief, then they're being moved to a totally different job. So the whole thing, it requires leadership, Ben.
Good.
We haven't got
Henry Bolton, OBE, thank you for joining me. Appreciate it. Yeah, one quick comment on that. Sarah, on your say, you say, we all have to have DBS checks to get certain jobs, check coming back into our own country, yet certain people arrive in the country with no criminal record checks. You just couldn't write it. Yeah, you couldn't write it. But unfortunately, it's absolutely true. In the Sun today, bombshell exclusive story. Anyway, still to come, King Charles has touched down in Australia, the first monarch to do so in 13 years. We're going to be going to Sydney with our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, who's got all the latest. There's the King and Queen Camilla coming down the steps of his plane earlier today. A pretty gruelling 24-hour trip for the King, not least because he's recovering from cancer, of course. But we understand after a day's rest tomorrow, he will be smashing his royal duties as only he and his family know best. I'm Ben Leo, standing in for Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Back in a tick.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
National Trust Director General has said something rather curious. She's admitted that 70% of the charity's staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists. Yes, this was speaking at a Labour Party fringe event. The boss of the charity, Hilary McGrady, acknowledged that there was a gap between her staff's views and the views held by the wider public. So was she being honest? Joining me now to discuss this is historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Mankoo, who I believe is with me. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Can this be true?
The founders of the National Trust and later figures involved in it, like my hero James Lees Milne, were really motivated by love of nation. But I think that love of nation in the Trust has become actively, national self-loathing. And that's really the state of modern Britain. And with the Trust, I mean, what we've done is we've actually entrusted our national heritage to those people who actually actively despise our national heritage. And it's, it's utter madness.
Have these people wanted to take over charities like the National Trust for their political ends, or is it just something that happens? Is it just the type of people who work in charities?
This has been part of the long march through the institutions, that people need to understand that Britain is now a post-revolutionary society. So the buildings that house our institutions look the same, but the people who now run them bear no comparison to the generations who lovingly built and ran them. They are cuckoos in the nest, and we need to understand that. And of course, once you realize that, of course, that explains completely why, the National Trust and others have crudely tried to denigrate our national heroes and link them and their houses to colonialism and slavery, as they ludicrously tried to do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. 3:52. Ben Leo in for Martin Daubney this afternoon as he enjoys his holidays. Thank you for your company. I always say it when I do this show, it's very lonely here in Westminster. It's just me and the floor manager, and Martin, for some reason, likes it very chilly in the studio, so my hands are very, very cold indeed. But Luckily, I have your company, not least on gbnews.com/your say. Lots of views coming in, including from Humpty. You say, for goodness sake, how on earth did 400,000 migrants get let into this country legally without criminal record checks? We're an island. It can't be that tricky for our Home Office to sort out. I call it a basic fundamental process. Jane, you say, absolutely, the citizens of the UK are not being kept safe. My 83-year-old mother has started getting anxiety episodes as she thinks when she goes out, she may get stabbed. She's been on this planet all this time and only just feeling unsafe in her own country. It's shocking. Yeah, Jane, I'm sorry to hear that about your mum. Send her our regards. I feel the same as well. I'm always on alert. My spidey senses are tingling on public transport, on the train when I'm going back to Sussex after work, because you just don't know who's around, who's behind you. Maybe I'm being ultra paranoid. Maybe the chances of being randomly attacked are very, very slim. But when you see, maybe it's amplified by social media, but when you see all these incidents happening, I mean, train stabbings, hits and runs, the poor soldier who was stabbed down in Kent, it puts you on edge, unfortunately. And Dawn, you say, Ben, it takes somewhat longer than a minute to check on someone's criminal background, but not the time the current or the last government was taking. Yeah, it probably takes more than a minute. I guess I was just throwing some numbers out there. Yeah, either way, whether it takes a minute, an hour or a day, we should be checking people's criminal record backgrounds. Lots more to come over the next 2 hours. I'm Ben Leo, covering for Martin Daubney. Thank you for your company. I'll be back in just a tick, but first, here is your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. For the rest of today, it's fine in the east, but turning wetter in the west, and it's increasingly windy, although not as windy as we're expecting on Sunday because of Storm Ashley. That's developing in the Atlantic at the moment, and it deepens rapidly as it heads towards the UK during Saturday and into Saturday night. Ahead of that, yeah, there's some strong winds across the west and northwest associated with a band of heavy rain that by evening ends up across western England and Wales. It also turns cloudy and damp overnight in the east of England, but the rain clears Scotland and Northern Ireland, where winds will fall lighter and temperatures will dip into the mid to low single figures. Elsewhere, a milder night to come because of the cloud and rain that we start the day with across the southeast, the Midlands, and eastern England. The rain heavy at times and fairly slow moving, so it's a bit of a damp start here. But for Wales and the southwest, as well as for parts of northern England, a brighter start to the day, some sunshine, a patchy cloud around for Northern Ireland as well as Scotland, and a few showers starting to move in from the west. But eastern Scotland and the far north, largely clear skies. Now, it may take until the middle of the afternoon for eastern England to dry up and indeed brighten up. But elsewhere across the UK, once the rain's cleared through, it's sunny spells and a few showers. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England and Wales most likely to see those showers. But in between, with relatively light winds and some decent sunny spells, a pleasant enough day, even in the east of England, late afternoon once that rain clears. And any showers that do form will fade away overnight with clear spells, at least for the first half of Saturday night. Then Storm Ashley turns up, bringing the risk of considerable impacts, especially in the northwest of Scotland, with wind gusts of 80 miles an hour.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Stop-start on the northbound M1 just past junction 23A towards Nottingham 24. There was a collision, all lanes are back open. Still seeing some queues though. The A45 in Northampton still closed both ways, so no way through between the Earls Barton turnoff and the Great Bedding interchange. A big queues at the scene there of a serious collision. Congestion clockwise M25 this Friday afternoon. Now just after Chorleywood at junction 18, lane 4, the outside lane, coned off to assist a collision and it's queuing. Eastbound M2, now the exit slip coming off at Brenley Corner. That's junction 7, closed, queuing back before Faversham at junction 6 there at the scene of a collision. And Devon, the southbound M5 still queuing away from Tiverton 27, though the earlier breakdown's gone. All lanes are back open, and that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We love making our good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good afternoon to you. Hope you're well. Thanks for joining me. It's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News with me, Ben Leo, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and indeed all across the UK. Any moment now, we'll be crossing live to Sir Keir Starmer, who's speaking live from Germany. He's met Joe Biden, Olaf Scholz and Emmanuel Macron to talk about escalation in the Middle East and continuing war in Ukraine. So what can we expect from this press conference? Well, joining me now is man of the moment, Christopher Hope, our political editor. Chopper, what's this trip to Germany about?
This is a delayed visit, a meeting of the Quad in Berlin. The Quad is the US, UK, France, Germany, so the four leaders of those countries. One of Joe Biden's last visits to Europe, I expect, before the election.
Yeah.
Now barely 2.5 weeks away. Of course, and that's a very tight run between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. We're expecting the two big issues on the in tray will be Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, Berlin being quite near to Ukraine, of course, much more the nearest capital of those four countries to Ukraine, and the issues in Israel. Again, pressure on the US to sanction the use of using the navigation tool to allow these UK-made Storm Shadow missiles to be used and fired into Russia. So we might hear more from that today because there's pressure from Zelensky to support his idea, his victory plan, as he calls it.
Yeah.
And also in Israel, big issues there with the killing of Sinwar, the Hamas leader, overnight, and whether there'll be pressure to push for some form of peace deal now, given that the cutting off the head of the snake, as it were, dealing with the issue of Hamas and the leadership has been dealt with. Of course, there still remain dozens, as far as we know, still alive Israeli hostages held by Hamas, and that's why I think it's likely that Netanyahu is like to resist that pressure right now.
Yeah, it was one of their goals, the Israeli, the IDF and Netanyahu. They said we're amongst other things, in the year since October the 7th, we're going after Sinwar. They've got their man. I think they were quite surprised that they got him in the way they did, and we'll show some of that dramatic drone footage a bit later in the show. But pressure is now on Netanyahu to call a ceasefire.
That there is the Security Council, of course. And there's Keir Starmer when he was there in New York a few weeks ago. Ben, sorry to cut across you there, but that isn't the Quad meeting there. That is the meeting of the Security Council, and that's, of course...
some weeks ago.
It is indeed. But it is one of these big moments, and we're increasingly seeing Sir Keir Starmer project himself on the world stage in a way we didn't see from Rishi Sunak. I mean, Mr Sunak, since he became Prime Minister for those 2 years, really hunkered down in the UK and focused on the UK economy, the votes, trying to win that fifth term in government. But we're seeing a lot more of this projection internationally from this leader.
Well, I'm not sure if you've been counting, Chopper, but somebody on your side just said that Starmer's taking 9 trips abroad for work in his first 100 days. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
And is that a lot?
I think it's quite a lot. I mean, he's the leader, of course, who famously said he was more happy at home in Davos than Westminster, Ben,
yes.
as you remember, which back then, I think that was January last year, then the Tories' woes were so great, no one really cared much. But it says something that he's someone who does like travelling. I mean, I guess there's no electoral pressure on him at the moment. He's got 170 or so strong majority in Parliament, so he can use this time to project internationally. But anything that takes him out of the UK means he's not dealing with the issues here, and they are great. And I know that next week we're expecting the Prime Minister to fly to the Commonwealth heads of government, taking him out of Westminster again for another long period. Into that period, of course, journalists will speculate, news emerges, and yet again, the kind of the government drifts in what it wants to do. And we're seeing that, I think, for me, since about the beginning of August with those riots in Southport following those dreadful killings of those 3 girls in Southport, I've seen not a lot of rudder from this government. I blame, personally, the delay in the budget for 16 weeks. That budget had to be held very quickly after the election. It sets the tone for the following 5 years. A 16-week wait while the OBR needed 10 weeks to check the details, whatever. If you're confident in your numbers, just go ahead and do it. You know, you don't need to be Liz Truss, or you can use her example, but be confident. Instead, they've hid behind the OBR, got that check done, which might soothe the market's concerns. But I think we haven't really got to the beginning of this government, Ben. We're still in the trailers, and that's maybe a concern for some people.
Well, obviously they've not done a truss and gone as far as that, but as you mentioned, the wait for this budget is causing some concern and anxiety in the markets. I'm moving house at the moment. I'm getting a mortgage for the new purchase, and mortgage rates had been creeping down slightly. You could get a 5-year fix for under 4% for the first time with a semi-decent deposit. But now, because of the long wait for the budget, they don't know, banks and so on don't know how much they're going to be borrowing, how much they're going to be spending or taxing. They're now creeping back up again. So, as I said, not a Liz Truss style wipeout, but they are certainly guilty of putting some unease into the market.
But the 1.7% fall to inflation, the CPI inflation from 2.2% this week, does mean there should be 2 interest rate cuts before Christmas. So the Leo household deal might be saved by these 2 cuts in interest rates. But, back to Sir Keir Starmer, he's someone who is, comfortable on the world stage. He knows Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor. I was actually there when they met for the first time since he became Prime Minister at the NATO summit in Washington, and there was a very warm bear hug, and he does see a lot of common cause with Scholz on sport, and they're old friends. Even though he is on the up, Keir Starmer, post his landslide majority, the other people he's speaking to, all 3 of them, really...
All on the ropes, aren't they?
All on the way out.
Chopper, let me ask you, you've travelled with Sir Keir Starmer on planes to, I think, was it Washington the last time?
Yeah, quite a lot recently.
What's he like when you're travelling? When he's not got the cameras there, he's not giving political interviews, is he any different? Has he got more character in private than...
He smiles a lot more, but they all do. They relax. I think Rachel Reeves is one who looks quite sort of firm and stern-faced when you're on TV, but when away from that, she's quite a charming person. I think I often try and flip it, and I wonder how I would appear if I was interviewing me. I'd be probably a bit alarmed too about what the next question might be. So I think he's someone who's doing his best. He's trying to do his best by the country. I think he has a problem understanding maybe where the story's going and why it might look bad. And I think we saw that over the freebies situation, where there's no one around these top people saying, how on earth would that appear in the papers?
Did he seem stressed or weathered at all by his first couple of months?
No, he just seems frustrated, I think, that we're asking maybe about some trivial things, and he's thinking of the bigger picture, his 5 missions and the like.
Got it. Well, I would argue, and others would argue, look, these are the standards you set, Labour Party. When you were...
Boris Johnson,
when you're lambasting Boris for crusty M&S sandwiches in Downing Street, don't be surprised when people have a go at you for going to a concert. These are the levels of...
Or taking free spectacles or whatever it might be.
Exactly. Chopper, we are just waiting for Sir Keir Starmer's big live speech in Germany. I think we've got a few minutes, so in the meantime, we're going to move on to the Conservative leadership debate, which you expertly hosted last night. Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch battled it out at that special GB News event. This was your report from last night.
Kemi Badenoch, will you call, please?
Heads.
Heads. Tails it is, Kemi Badenoch. Do you want to go first or second, Robert?
I'll go first, Chris.
And with that, the race to lead kicked off on GB News. Robert Jenrick would face questions from the Conservative members first, followed by Kemi Badenoch. And it's straight for Robert Jenrick on how to bring back the Reform voters.
That we tackled the biggest issues facing this country. And I think that does begin with migration. Because if we don't regain the public's trust on that issue, if we don't get back the millions of voters that we've lost to reform, we're just never going to be in government again.
It got spicy when talking about free speech.
The police have to enforce our existing laws without fear or favour. They must never allow a worry about community relations to stop fighting extremism.
Robert Jenrick's comments kept coming back to immigration and the ECHR.
There's a clear choice here.
It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
Christopher Chope has said today that Kemi Badenoch is preoccupied with her children. He says it's impossible to be a leader and a parent. Can a mum or a dad be that person and a leader?
Well, I hope so. I've got 3 kids myself. So I think he was wrong. He was definitely wrong.
The issue of slavery reparations is coming up. There's a meeting of the Commonwealth leaders next week. Should we pay slavery reparations for our imperial past?
No, absolutely not.
Then it was the turn of Kemi Badenoch. I asked if her pitch was based on principles but not policies, and if this was a problem.
I am not here to impose just what's in my head on everyone in the party. That is not what it needs. That is not how we unite the party. I know so many of you are tired and sick of the infighting and the squabbling. It happens when we don't get a consensus before we start proposing things to the public.
So where does she stand on ECHR withdrawal?
If we need to leave the ECHR in order to control migration, we should leave it. But it is not a silver bullet. It's not even the most radical thing that we can do.
Kemi Badenoch was asked by one of the members of the audience if it was time to end the culture wars.
It depends on who started these so-called culture wars.
They say you may have started it.
No, I don't think so. A lot of these things were happening long before Conservatives started speaking about them. I am worried about the way people talk about the history of this country.
But what does she think about being accused by a Tory MP that she can't be a mother of 3 and a leader?
Of course you can. I love my children. I have the most beautiful children in the world. I want to spend as much time with them as possible. I said to all of you that family was one of my key principles. I was able to be a great business secretary and trade secretary and equalities minister, effectively doing 3 jobs while balancing my home life. If I can do that, I can do this too.
And we did get some policies out of Kemi Badenoch in the end.
Labour's putting VAT on private school bills from January. Would you reverse it if you become Prime Minister?
OK, so...
It's a policy.
I know it is a policy. So I feel bad because I have to slightly change what I said. That is the very first thing that I will do if I become Prime Minister.
But crucially, what did the members think?
I think it was a tie, actually. But for me, I think Jenrick just about.
Yeah, I think Kemi, I think she's absolutely great.
At the end of the day, I have a feeling neither of them will become Prime Minister.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the thing is, neither of them are going to appeal to the electorate. We lost more votes to Labour than we did to Reform.
Christopher Hope, GB News, Westminster.
All right, Chopper, what's your takeaway from last night?
Well, just interesting of those 2 points on policy. So we've got a new line now from Kemi Badenoch saying she would reverse the VAT increase on private school fees coming through in January if she becomes Prime Minister. And the day one issue for Robert Jenrick, if he becomes Tory leader, is start working on ECHR withdrawal. And that was quite telling, I think. It looks like Jenrick is willing to go big on big policy ideas, a big suite of ideas, trying to attract as many people from the kind of coalition of Tory members there are out there. Whereas we got more of a vibes feeling from Kemi Badenoch, a rare policy there. Want something about banning new pylons in Norfolk to collect the grid, put them underground for keep the beauty of the country going. But really, it's Kemi Badenoch saying, "Trust me, I'm a right winger. I won't let you down." Whereas Robert Jenrick saying, "I'm going to prove it to you." The difference there is that the areas where Jenrick is being firm on could be divisive for the party, particularly on ECHR and other areas, whereas Kemi Badenoch is saying, "I'm going to get there eventually, I'll review it, I might argue pulling out the ECHR if we need to." So there's 2 kind of competing visions there, one full of principle, one full of policy, and a party going to choose. And I just think that in the room, certainly, 2/3 of it was pro-Kemi Badenoch, and not many changed their minds last night.
Now, Chopper, Michael Gove, the new editor of The Spectator, he wrote that Jenrick, whilst he was, a fond fan of him, not so much as Kemi, of course, who he has...
They're all friends, Ben, don't forget.
All friends, that's a nice way to put it. He said that Jenrick was a traditional Tory boy.
Identikit.
Yes. Which would be easier for Keir Starmer to swat away at the dispatch box compared to Kemi Badenoch. Has he got a point? And also, is the endorsement, if you can call it that, of Gove towards Badenoch actually a hindrance towards Kemi?
3 points there. Last point first, probably. For some Brexiteers, they're worried about it. Your point there about swatting him away, I think that Jenrick would appear at the dispatch box in the first week of November after the budget in that first PMQs as a kind of nearly complete politician who can do speeches. I think Kemi Badenoch is not a complete politician. Last night she had 5 minutes to speak. She spoke for 3.5 minutes. I think she was nervous and she warmed into it as she got into the to and fro with me in the audience. Jenrick is definitely one who would be able to do the work, the speeches. I think that she would need some work training on the speeches and the rest of it to get that right. To me, she seems quite nervous. But I think there's an authenticity within her that shines out, and I think Tory members are seeing that. And that expression about we played earlier on the show, how she talks about stop apologising for your country and worrying about it. She's talking to a mainly white membership base for the Tory party. There's a black woman here born outside this country who came here telling this party, stop being embarrassed about who you are, be proud of it, ignore what the left say about this. I'm not a victim, I won't be painted as a victim, nor should you feel that you can't say who you are. So I think that kind of empowerment, weirdly, is what the members are reacting to.
I can't remember what I was reading, maybe it was Fraser Nelson. He was saying that actually Jenrick last night was saying, I've been in the Conservative Party since I was 16 in Wolverhampton, and he was suggesting, well, actually, that's probably not a good thing, being a lifelong Conservative, you know, and drained in the Conservative culture for so long and getting bogged down in all the squabbling. And
they all say funny things. She worked in McDonald's, and she told me on my podcast she became working class working at McDonald's. I mean, that was mocked by the left, but she says things which are clumsy. What she meant was, I learned the value of work in McDonald's, is what she meant. She also talked during a party conference about regulation on small companies, taking the idea of maternity pay, saying it's paid far too early or something. That meant that everyone piled in saying you want to remove it or reduce it for women. She wasn't saying that. She's merely saying that the cost of it is a lot on small companies. She says things and then spends a lot of time getting out of scrapes, and that's got to change if she becomes leader.
Yeah, slightly gaffe-prone, we would suggest.
But then unpolished, you see, and she can get better. It can get better.
And I suppose, in the same way, I mean, this channel was, and probably still is slightly...
We're on, aren't we?
Exactly, there we go. So the scrappiness of things and the kind of the rawness is... sometimes it's endearing. You know, you don't always want...
But we're authentic, Ben.
Exactly.
And that's why the viewers love us.
Exactly. Thank you, Chopper. Great work. Thank you for being with me this afternoon. Now, if you've had enough of all the politics in this country, you can jet yourself off to a nice holiday somewhere, much like Martin Daubney has today, because time's ticking on your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway, and there's just 2 weeks remaining to get your entry in. Make sure you do not miss out. Here's all the details you need to win.
We love making our audience big cash winners, and you really could be next with £36,000 tax-free cash in your bank.
All right, best of luck with that. Now stay with me as we wait for Sir Keir Starmer to address a press conference in Germany as he attends that meeting of world leaders. I'm Ben Leo, in for Martin Daubney this afternoon on GB News, Britain's news channel. Back in a tick.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're joined by Lewis Oakley and Esther Stanhope. And Lewis, let's start with Free Gear Keir, shall we? It's been the story of the week, and apparently it's led to, well, calamity in the polls.
Yeah, so he has dropped by 26 points in the opinion polls. And, I mean, it's just been sort of going down from day one. He didn't even start that high. But, yeah, this is just bad optics. As we say, like, he hasn't done anything illegal or wrong, everything was declared, but at the same time you're telling people they don't get their winter fuel allowance and you're there walking off with your swag bag. It's just not a good look. And even, you know, I was thinking as well, the optics of them trying to clamp down on MPs having second jobs. You know, any of those could turn around and say, well, actually, we have to pay for our own clothes. I just think it's just bad optics that he's had. And, you know, we've got those comparisons of Sunak in the stands, he's just sat amongst the people. And
Prince William goes to Villa games, albeit in the director's box, but it's not an 8k per game seat. And by the way, can I just mention, this isn't just an isolated Labour incident. Since the start of their tenure, they were accused of filling the civil service with previous Labour donors, previous Labour aides, people who worked for Labour Together think tank. The civil service is meant to be politically neutral, and they bypassed a lot of procedures to get people into their positions, not least the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who parachuted Ian Caulfield, his name was, who donated £5,000 personally to her, and then he ended up in the Treasury with a 175k a year job. Yes, he did resign after it was revealed in the Times, but it does make you wonder, you know, you've spent years having a go at the Tories for this, and you do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's full of hypocrisy, and also the whole Sue Gray thing, and they were slagging off the Conservatives for not towing the line, and now they're being hypocrites because now they're taking freebies.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. 4:20, Ben Leo in for Martin Daubney on GB News this afternoon. Some of you asking whether Sir Keir Starmer's speech in Germany has started. It hasn't just yet. We are on standby. As soon as the Prime Minister does start speaking, we will cross over to him. But now, let's go to Charlie Peters, who's on the scene of let's be frank, a pretty tragic and grim story in South East London where a heavily pregnant woman and her unborn child have died following a crash involving an unmarked police car. The 38-year-old woman and her unborn baby died as a result of their injuries. Charlie Peters, good afternoon. What's the latest down there, please?
Good afternoon, Ben. Well, we've just heard in the last hour that the Independent Office for Police Conduct, the watchdog that will assess police incidents, has confirmed that they are appealing for witnesses after the latest round of information released about that incident yesterday evening. They've also said that they had their investigators on the scene last night during that situation. We also have a better understanding of what actually happened now. When the Metropolitan Police announced this incident this morning, they didn't know whether the unmarked police vehicles were reacting to an incident. We didn't know what actually occurred here at this junction between the A20 and the Kidbrooke Road. Several witnesses who attended the scene last night have now since spoken to reporters here. One man, Abu Bakr, a 34-year-old delivery driver, told us earlier that he witnessed the woman, the 38-year-old, turning into the leisure centre just behind me down the road where four unmarked police cars, four Volvos, were travelling up to 90 miles per hour in the oncoming lane of traffic, in her lane of traffic. They said that they were firing their sirens very loudly as they made that direction down the road behind me. The first vehicle hit the car, they said. Two witnesses I've spoken to say they saw the vehicle flip over several times, landing about 10 metres down the road. I've seen some chalk left by the investigators made last night, which clearly depicts where the vehicle was hit and where it ended up, which does match with the testimony we've heard from those witnesses. And quite stunningly, this delivery man, and also another witness who was in the car in front of the woman, said that her husband was waiting for her at the leisure centre with another child. We understand their daughter ran out to support her, that she was unconscious throughout the injury taking place. There was a 20-minute wait for an ambulance to arrive on the scene, we've been told. Another neighbour, another witness here, has showed GB News some footage of this incident last night, a few hours later. Up to 9 ambulances on scene. The London Fire Brigade also present, we believe, to cut off the roof of the vehicle that the police officers were in. One of them was seen hobbling out in the footage I've seen, but the driver perhaps needed to be retrieved through direct means there from the London Fire Brigade. The London Air Ambulance was also deployed to this location last night, where a 38-year-old woman and her unborn child were killed following that collision. Now, the Metropolitan Police have shared their deep condolences with her. They said the next of kin are being supported. As we understand it, that husband of the victim witnessed the incident taking place directly. But we've also seen several tributes being left here at the position where her car landed following being hit by that Volvo travelling up to 90 miles per hour, we were told. Several flowers left behind, several tributes, deepest sympathies expressed in cars at the scene as an IOPC investigation continues after that crash yesterday evening.
Also, Charlie Peters down on the scene in South East London. Thank you for that report. Yeah, just tragic, and the detail about you'd assume is the father or the husband with their other child, just totally grim. It's a cruel life at times. Our thoughts are with the victims and the families. OK, let's move on. The Prime Minister has trouble at home, more of it at least, as a backlash grows against what's expected to be a real nightmare of a Halloween budget in just a few weeks. It could be the biggest tax raid in history, as Chancellor Rachel Reeves plans to raise inheritance tax to generate up to £35 billion. And reports this morning suggest she'll also meddle with stamp duty, which could, if it is indeed true, increase costs of buying a house by up to £2,500 in March next year. Of course, the devil is in the detail. We'll find out in the budget. But Chopper, what's the consensus? What's the mood like in Westminster ahead of this budget?
Nervous. I mean, I think all the country is nervous. We're seeing it in consumer confidence data out in September. We've got this budget on October 30th from Rachel Reeves. We're told to prepare for tough choices by this government. They're looking at raising £40 billion, we're told, from tax hikes and spending cuts. It seems like a bulk of that may come from fiddling with inheritance tax. 4% of estates pay this rate, or 40% on estates worth over £325,000. So big choice to be made. Maybe fuel duty might go up. A levy on e-cigarettes. Capital gains could go up into the 30% mark from around 24% at the moment. So big issues here being discussed here. And lots of concerns being raised about Rachel Reeves, what she might try and do. There'll be some cuts in welfare, but frankly, not as much. The balance will be weighted heavily in tax hikes, judging by the reporting at the moment. £3 billion cuts in welfare over 4 years is barely scratched the surface of a bill which rises to £58 billion by 2028, 2029 from £39 billion at the moment. And that's barely a quarter of what the Tories were planning to do at the last election. So big choices again. We are 12 to 10 days out from the budget, and already feverish speculation and concerns for many people.
And it's not just Brits, is it, who are concerned about this budget? You've got the likes of Labour's Transport Minister Louise Hay, Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, all going to Sir Keir Starmer and saying, listen, boss, we cannot afford any cuts to our departments. Angela Rayner as well. Angela Rayner
being the most potent. She, of course, is the elected deputy leader of the party and also housing secretary. She's unsackable. She is there, voted in there by members, so she has quite a powerful role here, being the conscience maybe of the left in at the top of government. So yeah, she's a problem for Sir Keir Starmer, no question. But this will do a 1-year spending settlement this time and a bigger, longer-term settlement in the new year. We'll see more on the defence spending and the like, and there's not a lot of money to go around. Of course, with the scale of our borrowing, much of it is borrowed money as well, so not easy.
Didn't they pledge not to borrow?
Well, yes, not any more than where they are at the moment, but we're paying interest down on the huge national debt.
OK, well, it's a Halloween budget. It could be a nightmare on Reeve Street. Or is that a...
I should also say, while we're on, Kemi Badenoch was born in Wimbledon, not outside the UK, of course.
Oh, yes.
But was brought up in Lagos until she was 16.
That's an interesting concept. Normally, it's the other way around, isn't it? You're kind of born abroad and you come to the UK, or vice versa.
I mean, it's not relevant, really, but I thought it was important to get that corrected.
Yeah, great. Chopper, thank you very much. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting budget. I don't understand the politics of envy where you target... I mean, you're giggling, Chopper, but I'm absolutely certain, when you invest in assets and stocks and shares and houses or metals or whatever it is, you're using money that has already been taxed, and then you're getting taxed again. I mean, I personally think that capital gains tax at its current rate, I think 28% is the top rate for highest rate taxpayers, I think that's theft. I think it's the equivalent of going down to bookies on a high street, going into a Ladbrokes or whatever, asking who's had a winner on the horses that day and saying, thanks very much, Joe blogs, I'll take 30% of that. Totally undeserved.
That is a debate. Income is taxed at the rates we know about, the famous rates, to 40%, the higher rate, 45%, the additional rate. But wealth is not taxed the same way, and the left is concerned about that for a long time. And that equalisation of those two things is where the left is going on taxation. But the issue of double taxation, particularly with inheritance tax, you earn the money, you pay your tax on it, you save it up for your family and your inheritance, and you're taxed again at death on estates over...
Well, yeah, we're not even got into inheritance tax,
well,
have we?
It absolutely drives... It's very unpopular on the right, and in fact, James Cleverly... I think James Cleverly... one of the candidates was looking at axing that measure if they become leader and Prime Minister.
Yeah, can you imagine? You work hard in a PAYE job, you pay income tax, you then use some of that money to invest in, I don't know, some stocks. They do well over the course of 20 years. You buy a home for your children to enjoy when you're gone. Yeah. And then when you do eventually go, that's taxed as well.
To quote you, George Harrison from The Taxman, they'll tax the pennies on your eyes, Ben.
Good man. Chopper, thanks very much. Still more to come between now and 5 o'clock. But first, let's get your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 4:30. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is in Germany today for a meeting with Quad leaders. Sir Keir Starmer travelled to Berlin to meet with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, US President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron. They are set to discuss developments in the Middle East and also the war in Ukraine. Now, some breaking news. A former police detective has been jailed for 19 years for stealing cocaine from work to sell on the streets of Manchester. The court heard that Andrew Talbot took almost 4 kilograms of cocaine with a retail value of £400,000 from an evidence store, and then he searched police systems for dealers to help him sell the drug. The 54-year-old, who worked for Greater Manchester Police's Serious Crime Division, was found guilty of misconduct in public office and supplying Class A drugs last month. In other news, a heavily pregnant woman and her unborn baby have died after a collision with an unmarked police car in southeast London. The incident happened at around 6:15 last night. It's unclear if the police vehicle was responding to an emergency at the time, which is now a key focus of the ongoing investigation. Police officers in the police car were taken to hospital but have since been discharged, and a road closure remains in place as inquiries continue. The Independent Office for Police Conduct is now appealing for witnesses as they investigate the circumstances surrounding the fatal collision. In other news now, Israel's year-long war with Hamas took a dramatic turn yesterday as the IDF killed Yahya Sinwar, the militant group's leader and mastermind behind last year's attacks. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a major blow to Hamas. He warned the fight is far from over, though. Talks between Netanyahu and President Biden are currently focused on using this moment to free hostages and end the conflict. But Iran says the killing will strengthen resistance. Meanwhile, Hezbollah in Lebanon has vowed to escalate its conflict with Israel. Niall Horan has paid tribute to his former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne, saying he'll cherish every moment they spent together. Horan's emotional Instagram post came after Liam died at the age of 31, falling from a third-floor balcony in Buenos Aires. Horan sent love to Payne's family, including his son Bear, signing off with "Love you, brother." A post-mortem confirmed multiple traumas from the fall, with police describing Payne's hotel room as in complete disarray. Other musicians and fans have been remembering Liam's infectious energy with a candlelit vigil held in Argentina. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. For the rest of today, it's fine in the east, but turning wetter in the west and it's increasingly windy, although not as windy as we're expecting on Sunday because of Storm Ashley. That's developing in the Atlantic at the moment, and it deepens rapidly as it heads towards the UK during Saturday and into Saturday night. Ahead of that, there's some strong winds across the west and northwest associated with a band of heavy rain that by evening ends up across western England and Wales. It also turns cloudy and damp overnight in the east of England, but the rain clears Scotland and Northern Ireland, where winds will fall lighter and temperatures will dip into the mid to low single figures. Elsewhere, a milder night to come because of the cloud and rain that we start the day with across the southeast, the Midlands and eastern England. The rain heavy at times and fairly slow moving, so it's a bit of a damp start here. But for Wales and the southwest, as well as for parts of northern England, a brighter start to the day, some sunshine, a patchy cloud around for Northern Ireland as well as Scotland, and a few showers starting to move in from the west. But eastern Scotland and the far north, largely clear skies. Now, it may take until the middle of the afternoon for eastern England to dry up and indeed brighten up. But elsewhere across the UK, once the rain's cleared through, it's sunny spells and a few showers. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England and Wales most likely to see those showers. But in between, with relatively light winds and some decent sunny spells, a pleasant enough day, even in the east of England, late afternoon once that rain clears. And any showers that do form will fade away overnight with clear spells, at least for the first half of Saturday night. Then Storm Ashley turns up, bringing the risk of considerable impacts, especially in the northwest of Scotland, with wind gusts of 80 miles an hour.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon to you. Hello, I'm Jules Buckley. There's some queues for the southbound M61 from the A666M, that's junction 2, down towards the M60, the Swinton interchange, that's junction 1. A collision means a lane closure is in place there, and naturally it's queuing. Better news clockwise for the M25, just after Chorleywood at 18. An earlier collision's been cleaned up now, but still some queues back to Maple Cross at 17. Anti-clock M25, traffic being held from Staines at 13 towards the M3 at 12, so queuing whilst the broken down van is dealt with. And if you're heading towards the southbound M3 in Hampshire, Winchester South 11 down towards Eastleigh at 10, 2 lanes shut, so just 1 lane open, a queue back to Winchester at junction 10 at the scene there of an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hello, welcome back. 4:36. Ben Leo in for Martin Daubney this afternoon on GB News. And some breaking news just now. Sir Keir Starmer has said no one should mourn the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Speaking at a press conference in Berlin just now, the Prime Minister also warned Israel the world wouldn't tolerate any more excuses on humanitarian assistance in Gaza. I'm joined now by the former head of the British Army, Lord Richard Dannat. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. What do you think Israel will be thinking of Sir Keir Starmer's comments here, saying that Britain wouldn't be tolerating any more time wasted on humanitarian assistance in Gaza?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag, that statement, isn't it? Of course, Sir Keir Starmer is right to say that nobody should be mourning the loss of Sinwar, and that, of course, he's absolutely right as far as that's concerned. But the rest of his message gets a little bit confusing. But I suppose you have to put it in the widest context that we have to accept that there are innocent, or at least uninvolved people in Gaza who have a right to go about their life and not have their life unduly, abruptly terminated by Israeli military operations. So I think the Prime Minister is not wrong insofar as saying that humanitarian aid must get into the innocent population of Gaza. But that sort of is slightly to the side point of really what this war is all about. And I think nobody can overlook the fact that the sworn aim of Hamas and the sworn aim of Hezbollah is the eradication of the Jewish state, of the Israeli state, and that therefore the Israelis have every right to do all that they can to smash Hamas and to smash Hezbollah in order to protect their own security, which is, after all, endorsed by the United Nations and has been since 1948.
Lord Zanuck, do you think, or do you agree at least with the consensus that Israel has made the West look a bit silly? Whilst we're posturing about arms embargoes and calling for ceasefires, over the past 12 months, Netanyahu and Israel have been getting on with the job. They've been trying to rid the world of the terrorist death cult that is Hamas. They've been setting their sights on Hezbollah up north. Have they made us all look a bit weak and silly, the West?
Well, I think both the Israelis and countries in the West are trying to tread a fine line between doing what is right to achieve their strategic objectives and what is right by the innocent people. Now, as far as Israel is concerned, there's no doubt at all that they are absolutely right in their desire to fight and to destroy Hamas and Hezbollah. I think where they have come under some criticism is the, you could argue, undue use of force that has killed a lot of civilians, a lot of whom we must assume are innocent civilians. So they're trying to walk that tightrope. In the West, bearing in mind these are democratic countries, and politicians like Joe Biden and Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron have to listen to their populations as well, where there are perfectly reasonable voices to say the innocent people in southern Lebanon, in Gaza, do need to be protected. So everybody here is trying to find a balance, but you can't get away from the fact that Israel has the absolute right to want to smash Hamas and to smash Hezbollah, because their sworn aim is the destruction of the State of Israel.
Indeed. Sir Keir Starmer asked whether he'd follow the United States in considering further arms embargoes on Israel if the humanitarian situation did not improve. He said, the situation on arms sales has been made very clear and our position has not changed. I do think, though, the death of Sinwar provides an opportunity for a step towards that ceasefire that we've all been long calling for. Surely there can't be a ceasefire until the hostages are released.
And I don't think there's going to be a ceasefire anytime soon. The death of Sinwar is certainly very significant. Whether it's a turning point, I think, is quite another matter. And why I say that, actually, is that the person who holds most of the cards on this is Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. And he knows that his government is only supported by the ultra-right-wing nationalists. And if he is to soften his line and unduly appear to be seeking a ceasefire, even if indeed Hamas was prepared to grant it, then he runs the risk of his government being overturned, losing the support of the ultra-right-wing who are keeping him in power. And then he personally is then standing in great jeopardy because he's got things he's going to have to answer for to the Jewish people at some point in the future.
And you did allude to it there. How significant is Sinwar's death? I was reading about his history a bit earlier. He spent 20 years in Israeli prison for allegedly murdering some Palestinian informants. It was in his time in prison, those couple of decades where he learned Hebrew fluently. It was said that he studied the enemy, Israel, to such an extent that made him, I guess, the menace of a leader he was until a couple of days ago. How significant is his death? Are we not just going to get another replacement?
Well, I think it is significant. I mean, I'm sure that there will be a replacement, but how soon there is a replacement and how effective that replacement will be, I mean, there is no doubt that Sinwar was the most significant character as far as Hamas is concerned. He was an operational commander. General David Petraeus, I think yesterday, said that Osama bin Laden, when he was hunted down and killed, actually it was less significant because he'd been pretty much sidelined by that stage. But Sinwar was the operational commander. And I think it's interesting just to reflect on the pictures that we've seen, how he came to be killed. And I think this is indicative of the pressure that Hamas is under. He wasn't moving with a large group of people from one tunnel to another. He was pretty much caught out in the open. Got caught up in a firefight, took cover in a house, was hunted down by a drone and was killed. This is, this is
extraordinary footage.
Someone whose war's not going very well.
Yeah, indeed. Extraordinary footage released by the IDF. Just Sinwar sitting there in his chair, his arm, or half his arm missing, and his final act of defiance was lobbing a stick at the drone. I mean, it's something out of Hollywood, you'd suggest. But former British Army Lord Richard Dannett, thank you very much. Former head of the British Army, Lord Richard Dannett. Yeah, stick with us and we'll play that drone footage again if you've not seen it. It really is extraordinary. It was released overnight and I'll endeavour to get it with you in the next hour or so. But still to come, After the death of One Direction star Liam Payne, aged just 31 years old, no age, is it? I'll be joined by former X Factor contestant Wagner to discuss his memories of Liam from their time together on the show. I'm Ben Leo, in for Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
So I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm going to see your show, Behind the Shoulder Pads, one night only at the Adelphi Theatre, October the 22nd. You're talking about your extraordinary life. Stage, screen, published author, 19
TV,
books, TV,
most important.
Yeah. Is there anyone who's managed to straddle, 7, 8 decades in showbiz and still be at the top?
Yes, I was thinking about that the other day because somebody said, you know, the last of good. There is a Shirley MacLaine.
Sure.
She started the same time as me.
Right.
Sophia Loren.
Yeah.
She started around the same time.
She's not working much, though.
It's true, she's not, but she's still out there being, you know, a major icon. And of course, people like Dick Van Dyke, who's just almost 100.
Yeah, he's incredible,
you know,
isn't he?
I'm a mere babe next to him.
You are. But and I was thinking about, you've written some extraordinary, wicked, waspish diaries, which of course you can because you've worked with so many people. Look at the names: Frank Sinatra, Lana Turner, Elizabeth Taylor, Dean Martin, Gregory Peck,
Richard Burton,
Paul Newman. The list goes on.
Gene Kelly,
and
my
Gene Kelly.
favourite.
Was he your favourite?
Yes.
Why?
Because I saw him in a movie when I was a little girl called For Me and My Gal with Judy Garland, and I just fell in love with him. It's such a cute movie. Well, they don't make movies like that anymore. And then I was lucky enough when I first went to Hollywood at age 20 to meet him and literally hang out with him and his friends. And then I put him in a movie with me that I produced. He played my husband in a movie called Sins. And he was wonderful. He was really wonderful.
The People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. 4:47, Ben Leo in for Martin Daubney, only on GB News. A really interesting email has just come in quickly from Heather. Good afternoon, Heather. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. You say, in 2008, Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, who's just been killed by Israel, was treated by Israeli surgeons in 2008. They removed a tumour from his brain. In 2023, he repaid them. I didn't know that, and it seems to be true. I've just given it a quick Google. It's true. He spent 20 years in Israeli confinement. He was jailed for accused of murdering Palestinian informants. And, yeah, Israeli doctors saved the life of Hamas leader. They took a tumour out his brain. And as you say, Heather, quite eloquently, that's how he repaid them. OK, moving on, some good news on the royal front. King Charles and Queen Camilla have touched down in Sydney, Australia for a historic royal tour. GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker is there and has more.
Well, if you're watching on television, you can see on your screens Sydney Opera House lit up with pictures of previous visits, official visits, of King Charles and Queen Camilla to Australia, because tonight They landed in the country, the first time a reigning king has ever stepped foot on Australian soil, so it really is a historic moment. But months ago, when this tour was starting to be planned, the king was diagnosed with cancer, so there was a huge question mark whether or not this tour could go ahead at all. But parts of the tour have been curtailed somewhat. So, for example, New Zealand was originally on the itinerary for the king to visit. That's no longer happening. Equally, he's going to be having a rest day tomorrow, as in Saturday, to make sure he has enough energy to carry out his packed programme of engagements over the next 6 days or so in Sydney and Canberra. But other engagements have been added. So, for example, the king will be meeting 2 professors, Australians of the Year, who've done work with melanoma, a type of skin cancer, one of the most common forms of cancer here in Australia. But of course, Republicans have been, let's say, drumming up a bit of noise ahead of King Charles's visit. They are calling it the farewell tour of Oz, but monarchists are welcoming King Charles, funnily enough, to Australia. They have written a letter, the Australian monarchist leads, to King Charles ahead of his arrival here. Thousands of signatures, they say, were on that. But the King and Queen arrived at Sydney Airport a little earlier on an Australian Air Force plane that picked them up from Singapore. King Charles had flown commercially from Heathrow, having left the United Kingdom yesterday. The King and Queen also released a statement saying that they are really looking forward to returning to this beautiful country to celebrate the extraordinarily rich cultures and communities that make it so special. And the King and Queen are going to be wanting to meet as many different communities across Australia as possible over the next 6 days or so. Bit of a hitch with some Australian premiers, some states premiers. There was a reception planned, there is a reception planned for Canberra on Monday, but all 6 Australian premiers, they're the political leaders of each state, have snubbed this reception. Various excuses, cabinet meetings, trade envoy visits. King Charles will put all that behind him. I think he'll very much be focused on meeting local communities, highlighting his charitable causes, and spending a very important 6 days in Australia as Australia's head of state.
All right, great stuff. Cameron Walker in Australia. Some interesting detail there about the King getting a commercial flight from Heathrow for that trip to the UK. I just wonder if you were sitting in first class on that plane, whatever it was, the BA plane or version, whatever it may be. What would your reaction be if you were sat next to Charles? And also props to the King for doing that as well, unlike his son Harry and, of course, Meghan, who love a private jet here, there and everywhere. I'm not sure you can get a private jet to Australia, but I'm sure they can work it out. But at least, as an eco-zealot, the King is sticking by his principles. Now, moving on, Alex Salmond's body has returned home to Scotland after businessman Sir Tom Hunter paid for the charter flight to repatriate the former First Minister of Scotland. Tony Maguire has this report.
The body of former First Minister Alex Salmond was successfully returned home to Scotland today. Mr Salmond was attending the Academy of National Diplomacy conference in North Macedonia, where he suffered a major heart attack last weekend. After days of discussions between the UK and Scottish governments, it was Sir Tom Hunter, the Scottish businessman, who paid for a private charter to bring his body home. Before leaving North Macedonia, a guard of honour placed a saltire atop his coffin and he was slowly marched into the plane. A few hours later, he touched down here at Aberdeen Airport, where he was met by his wife Moira, members of the Salmond family and the Alba Party, including his deputy, Kenny McCaskill. A procession of Yes bikers then began to lead the funeral cortege up towards their town of Stricken, where the family has said that funeral arrangements will be released in the coming days. Mr Salmond's legacy in Scottish politics is formidable and unrivalled. In 1987, the year he became an MP, Scottish independence was not but a fringe ideal. Under his stewardship, it grew to a movement that defines Scotland today and managed to gain the support of nearly half the country when he needed it most. Mr Salmond's legacy here in Scotland will surely be the man who almost got Scotland independence.
OK, well, good news to hear Alex Salmond is home. The gravitas of his political career was shown in the tributes from across the political spectrum. SNP figures, Labour, even Conservatives, all paying tribute to the man he was. And, good to see he's now back home in Scotland. He was met by a piper when the plane carrying his body landed at Aberdeen. And yeah, I'm pleased for his family, including his wife, Mariah, that he's finally home after his death in North Macedonia. Some quick emails before we get your weather. Denise, you said, I mentioned this to Chopper earlier, actually. You said, Ben, on a different note, Starmer's been Prime Minister for 105 days. He's made 9 separate trips abroad in that time. He should be here sorting out the awful mess in the UK. Yes, indeed. Carol, you say this is on the Labour staffers and even one Labour MP, Ruth Cadbury, who's the MP for Brentford and Isleworth, as far as I remember, in London, who's gone to America to campaign for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the US election. Carol, you say, Ben, who's paying for all the campaigners in America? And the likes of Nigel Farage tonight slamming those Labour activists for doing so, asking them not to interfere in elections and even calling it very stupid if indeed Donald Trump does win. Lots more to come in the next hour. I'm Ben Leo covering for Martin Daubney, only on GB News. Now, time for your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. For the rest of today, it's fine in the east, but turning wetter in the west, and it's increasingly windy, although not as windy as we're expecting on Sunday because of Storm Ashley. That's developing in the Atlantic at the moment, and it deepens rapidly as it heads towards the UK during Saturday and into Saturday night. Ahead of that, yeah, there's some strong winds across the west and northwest associated with a band of heavy rain that by evening ends up across western England and Wales. It also turns cloudy and damp overnight in the east of England, but the rain clears Scotland and Northern Ireland, where winds will fall lighter and temperatures will dip into the mid to low single figures. Elsewhere, a milder night to come because of the cloud and rain that we start the day with across the southeast, the Midlands and eastern England. The rain heavy at times and fairly slow moving, so it's a bit of a damp start here. But for Wales and the southwest, as well as for parts of northern England, a brighter start to the day, some sunshine, a patchy cloud around for Northern Ireland as well as Scotland, and a few showers starting to move in from the west. But eastern Scotland and the far north, largely clear skies. Now, it may take until the middle of the afternoon for eastern England to dry up and indeed brighten up. But elsewhere across the UK, once the rain's cleared through, it's sunny spells and a few showers. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England and Wales most likely to see those showers. But in between, with relatively light winds and some decent sunny spells, a pleasant enough day, even in the east of England, late afternoon once that rain clears. And any showers that do form will fade away overnight with clear spells, at least for the first half of Saturday night. Then Storm Ashley turns up, bringing the risk of considerable impacts, especially in the northwest of Scotland, with wind gusts of 80 miles an hour.
Whew. A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Issues around Glasgow if you're heading north up the M77. Now, just around the turn-off there for Dunbrack Road, Junction 1, this queues building. A collision means a lane is currently out of action. A lane shut too for the southbound M61, Junction 2, down towards Swinton at Junction 1. That's the turn-off, of course, for the M60. Delays there for around about half an hour. A lane shut there at the scene of a collision. Now, the eastbound M2 in Kent, the exit slip road coming off at Brenley Corner, Junction 2 is still closed off as a collision gets recovered. The queue now back to Faversham at Junction 6. And Hampshire, currently 2 out of 3 lanes still coned off on the southbound M3 around Winchester. So 11 down to 12, a multi-vehicle bump there. The queue is straddling back now to Junction 10. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's only 2 weeks.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Keir Starmer says no one should mourn the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, but also warned Israel the world will not tolerate any more excuses on humanitarian assistance in Gaza as he met with world leaders in Germany. Back at home, inheritance tax, school tax, stamp duty, national insurance, it goes on and on. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is eyeing them all up for what could be the biggest tax raid ever as we edge closer to a nightmare Halloween budget. Meanwhile, Republicans are outraged as Labour sends 100 staffers to help Kamala Harris win the US presidential election. Is this direct election interference by Sir Keir Starmer's party? Nigel Farage and Elon Musk think so, calling it diplomatically stupid. And, by the way, who's paying for all of this? And some tragic news breaking this afternoon. A heavily pregnant woman and her unborn baby have died after a car crash involving an unmarked police vehicle in London. We'll be live from the scene with the latest updates. And last night was the night, wasn't it? Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick appeared for the first time together on national television, here only on GB News. And as Tory members begin to vote for their new leader, who do you think came out on top? And was One Direction star Liam Payne badly let down by the music industry? Sharon Osbourne has spoken out, and we'll speak to one former X Factor contestant for their thoughts in just a tick. And of course, I want to hear from you, the lovely GB News viewers. gbnews.com/your say. I'll endeavour to read all your comments and emails out as the show progresses. A jam-packed last hour coming up. But first, your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. It's just gone 5 o'clock. These are your headlines. The Prime Minister is in Germany today holding talks with Quad leaders. Sir Keir Starmer travelled to Berlin to meet with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, US President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron. They've discussed developments in the Middle East and also the war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Israel's year-long war with Hamas took a dramatic turn yesterday as the IDF killed Yahya Sinwar, the militant group's leader and mastermind behind last year's attacks. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a major blow to Hamas. He warned the fight, though, is far from over. Talks between Netanyahu and President Biden are currently focused on using this moment to free hostages and end the conflict. But Iran says the killing will strengthen resistance. Meanwhile, Hezbollah in Lebanon has vowed to escalate its conflict with Israel. Back in the UK, a former police detective has been jailed for 19 years for stealing cocaine from work to sell on the streets of Manchester. The court heard that Andrew Talbot took almost 4 kilograms of cocaine with a retail value of £400,000 from an evidence store and searched police systems for dealers to help him sell the drug. The 54-year-old, who worked for Greater Manchester Police's Serious Crime Division, was found guilty of misconduct in public office and supplying Class A drugs last month. Now, a heavily pregnant woman and her unborn baby have died after a collision with an unmarked police car in south-east London. The incident happened at around 6:15 last night. It's unclear if the police vehicle was responding to an emergency at the time, which is now the key focus of the ongoing investigation. 2 officers in the police car were taken to hospital but have since been discharged, and a road closure remains in place as inquiries continue. In other news, Alex Salmond's body has returned to Aberdeen from North Macedonia following his sudden death at a conference on Saturday. The former First Minister passed away from a heart attack in Ohrid, and his body was flown back this afternoon on a chartered flight arranged by businessman Sir Tom Hunter. Our GB News Scotland reporter Tony Maguire has more.
The body of former First Minister Alex Salmond was successfully returned home to Scotland today. Mr Salmond was attending the Academy of National Diplomacy conference in North Macedonia, where he suffered a major heart attack last weekend. After days of discussions between the UK and Scottish governments, it was Sir Tom Hunter, the Scottish businessman, who paid for a private charter to bring his body home. Before leaving North Macedonia, a guard of honour placed a saltire atop his coffin and he was slowly marched into the plane. A few hours later, he touched down here at Aberdeen Airport, where he was met by his wife Moira, members of the Salmond family and the Alba Party, including his deputy, Kenny McCaskill.
Now, King Charles and Queen Camilla have touched down in Australia for a historic royal tour. The couple landed in Sydney, greeted with a warm welcome and a bouquet of flowers for the Queen. Our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, is on the ground in Sydney.
King and Queen have got a pretty packed schedule over the next 6 days in Australia, both in Sydney and in Canberra. Tomorrow, Saturday, is going to be a rest day for the King. Of course, he's travelled 24 hours to get here and he has cancer. He has paused his cancer treatment while he is here in Australia. But that will give him, it's hoped, enough energy to carry out his vast programme of engagement in New South Wales. But Republicans have been very vocal about the fact that the King is here. The first time ever that a reigning King has been on Australian soil. They are calling it the farewell tour of Oz. However, Australian monarchists are pointing out that there are thousands of people who are wanting to welcome King Charles and Queen Camilla here to Australia. But it is up to the Australian people to decide how well the King is received down under.
And Niall Horan has paid tribute to his former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne, saying he'll cherish every moment they shared. Horan's emotional Instagram post came after Liam died at the age of 31, falling from a third-floor balcony in Buenos Aires. Horan sent love to Payne's family, including his son Bear, signing off with "Love you, brother." A post-mortem confirmed multiple traumas from the fall, with police describing Payne's hotel room as in complete disarray. Other musicians and fans have been remembering Liam's infectious energy with a candlelit vigil held in Argentina. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Ben.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, former X Factor judge Sharon Osbourne claims the music industry let down Liam Payne after the One Direction star fell to his death from a hotel balcony in Argentina. He was aged just 31. For more on this now, I'm joined by former X Factor contestant Wagner, who shared the stage with Liam in, was it Series 7, Wagner, in 2010 on X Factor?
Ask you again, sorry.
Sorry, you were on stage with Liam Payne on X Factor in 2010. Was it Series 10? What's your memories of him?
Ah, yes. And we were also together on the X Factor tour. My first memory of Liam is that when I went to the X Factor audition, Liam was in the queue in front of me. And I appreciated how his father was very proud of him. And I feel really sorry for his father and mother. Obviously, his mom was also very proud of him. Nobody loves us like our mothers do. But it caught my attention how his dad was so proud of him.
Wagner, do you think the music industry has a case to answer with regards to the welfare of not just Liam Payne, but other artists? How did you feel when you left X Factor all those years ago?
We are surrounded by bad people and thieves everywhere. So It's a tough world.
Who do you mean by that? Who is?
Every business, everywhere, even your wife can steal money from you when you split up. So
my wife.
World,
I hope not.
Everything's about money. And so I think Liam became a multi-billionaire. I don't think he would have complaints about the music industry. Bearing in mind that no one is fair, he had a fair reward. That's what I think.
Okay. All right, Wagner. And just briefly, when was the last time you spoke to Liam? Did you stay in contact with him?
Well, the last time I saw Liam was in 2011 during the tour. He was a very nice kid. He was very mature for his age, very sensible, unpleasant.
Yeah. All right, very tragic news. Thank you for being with us, Ragnar. You were on Series 7 of The X Factor with Liam back in 2010. Thank you. Ragnar, of course, famous for his renditions of She Bangs and Love Shack, if you remember back in 2010. Huh? Sure you don't. Now, moving on. Sir Keir Starmer has today met Joe Biden, Olaf Scholz and Emmanuel Macron to discuss escalation in the Middle East and continuing conflict in Ukraine. And a few moments ago in a press conference in Berlin, he was also asked by journalists about whether he'd raise taxes in the so-called nightmare Halloween budget.
In relation to our manifesto, we are going to keep our manifesto pledges as we go into that election. I've made that very clear. I'm not going to preempt the individual measures that will be outlined by the Chancellor in due course, but I make fully clear this is going to be a budget that will fix the foundations and rebuild our country. No Prime Minister or Chancellor ever preempts the measures that may or may not be in a budget. I'm afraid you'll just have to wait until the Chancellor lays that out in full. But the structure, if you like, the framework, is going to be to fix the foundations and to rebuild our country. Thank you very much.
OK, I'm joined now by our political editor, Christopher Hope, in the studio. Christopher, in their manifesto, Labour's manifesto, they said they wouldn't impose taxes on working people, but if it's to be true, they will increase fuel duty, which, arguably is a tax on working people.
They defined working people, didn't they, by national insurance, income tax and VAT. That's their definition of the main things that hit working people. Of course, all these measures can hit working people if they increase inheritance tax. That's, say, money saved by people who have worked before they've died, levy on e-cigarettes, people smoke, so it goes on, Ben. If you apply working people to be that large, there'll be no tax at all on anybody. So I think the problem is working people will be taxed in this. How they defend it is interesting. If they do increase national insurance, the workers, the employers' element of that, is that the same as working people? That's hard to explain. They did say that NICs wouldn't go up, and if it does go up, if only on the part paid by employers, that could be a tax on working people. So that's where I think the real difficulty is. But yeah, no question. We heard there from the Prime Minister speaking in Berlin, saying that he won't comment on the detail in the budget, but we'll keep to our manifesto pledges, and that will be a very contested space come the budget, I think.
I mean, it's hard not to get away from the conclusion that they've been a bit clever with their language, Labour, talking about working people and being so vague about it. I guess they're just kind of, leaving themselves a lot of wiggle room. Also, he was making comments to Keir Starmer in Berlin on the Israel situation.
Yes, particularly the killing of the Hamas leader there.
Yahya Sinwar.
That's right, Yahya Sinwar saying there that no one should mourn the death of Hamas leader Sinwar. The blood of Israelis plus the blood of Palestinians, he says, are with him, and allies will keep... Allies, that's, of course, this big meeting of the Quad, that's UK, Germany, France, America, will keep working together to de-escalate across the region. Probably the last visit of Joe Biden, certainly before the election in America. We'll know who his successor is very shortly. So a moment for him. There's a delayed meeting from a week last Saturday when the hurricane hit Florida, so Biden was kept in America, so this didn't happen then. He also said, interestingly, I think, tough words on Israel from Starmer, saying that no more excuses over the humanitarian issue into Gaza, the real problem with claims that Israel Israel are denying that they can't get enough humanitarian aid by the UN into Gaza. That's got to change.
OK, Christopher Hope, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Let's return to our breaking story now. A heavily pregnant woman and her baby have died following a crash involving an unmarked police car in London. The 38-year-old and her unborn child died as a result of their injuries. We're joined now by GB News national reporter Charlie Peters, who's at the scene for us now in south-east London. Charlie, I keep repeating myself over the past couple of hours. Such a tragic story, and the detail you've been bringing us is heart-wrenching. What's the latest and the atmosphere, please, down there?
Well, Ben, yes, as you say, a great tragedy occurring here yesterday evening, just after 6:15, when the Met Police said this morning that a unmarked police car had collided with a 38-year-old woman driving on this junction here, further behind me, between the Kidbrooke Road and the A20 in south-east London, just in Eltham, where I am now. But while I've been on the scene the last few hours, we've got further information as to that tragedy last night, what happened leading up. It was unclear when they released that statement this morning, the Met Police, whether or not those cars were reacting to an incident. But from the footage I've seen and the testimony I've taken, it's abundantly clear that they were. 4 unmarked police Volvos driving with their sirens blazing down this road. One car, it appears, in oncoming traffic as the woman turned into the leisure centre, the building you can see just behind me to my right. Now, as I understand it, her husband was waiting for her behind the barriers with their daughter, aged about 4 or 5, according to another witness who was at the scene. And he witnessed his wife being hit by that unmarked police car, travelling up to 90 miles per hour, one estimate I heard, between 70 and 90, an estimate I heard from another eyewitness driving down this road. There are no brake marks on the road, so it's clear that that vehicle hit directly as it was making that journey onto another location. Now, the first police car stayed at the scene, obviously, after that collision. A couple of motorbikes with the police were also present, but the 3 other Volvos, I'm told, sped off, continuing to respond to the incident that they were reacting to. Now, the London Ambulance Service, the Fire Brigade and the Air Ambulance all responded to the scene last night here. I've seen footage shared by a neighbour of about 9 ambulances here well into the night. They only cleared off the scene at about 9 p.m, where sadly that 38-year-old woman and her unborn child died. Now, witnesses to the scene last night, and I've seen some of the footage, which obviously we're not able to show that the husband running towards the vehicle, trying to support his wife in those moments. She's unconscious in an appalling situation, but we've had an update in the last couple of hours that the Independent Office for Police Conduct did have assessors here last night, and they are appealing for witnesses to come forward to support their investigation.
Updates. I'm joined in the studio by retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville for his thoughts on this as well. I mean, Mike, just absolutely tragic for starters. In the case of police cars on blues and twos racing through the streets on to a job, what will happen now with the police?
Well, there'll obviously be a full inquiry with the Independent Office of Police Complaints and also the Metropolitan Police, Roads Policing. They've got some experts. They have detectives attached to them who will investigate the actual incident. But it just shows the tragedy. We ask, you know, these police officers seem to have been involved in a major incident with their blue lights on and the like, and we ask police officers to do very dangerous things on behalf of society. You know, carry weapons, drive very, very fast to get to things. And this is just a total tragedy, isn't it? You know, for the family, for the husband and child who witnessed all this, the mother, the unborn baby, and also the driver of that car never went out to do, you know, he went out to do his duty that day.
Yeah, and the detail from Charlie saying that I presume the father and the other child were waiting at the swimming pool for the mother and the unborn child to come. I mean, it's heartbreaking. I'm not saying this should happen in this case because I don't know the details of the case. Nobody does at the moment. But are there ever instances in incidents like this where the police officer driving the car will ever face criminal charges or at least disciplinary from the police force?
Yeah, we've seen. I mean, the office. This whole matter will be investigated. Officers can face discipline. They can face criminal investigations and charges if they've seemingly done wrong. But in this case here, just looking at the circumstances, you know, 4 vehicles all together, it would seem to be some major operation that there was. plainclothes officers in that were together, 4 cars, and as has been said, some motorbikes as well.
Is it rare, this kind of thing happening? How frequent do we see patrol cars or police cars involved in accidents, whether they're fatal or not?
Well, I mean, there's not many accidents. These drivers, the police drivers, are highly skilled. They're trained to drive at high speed, but tragically, things will happen. People won't hear the sirens. They're focusing on other things. Police officers make mistakes, other drivers make mistakes, and when officers are driving at that high speed in convoy or whatever, sadly things like this do happen.
Yeah. OK, Mike, thanks for that. Our thoughts are with, of course, gosh, I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about the victim, the family, the child who's been left now without their mother, the husband, and indeed, you alluded to it then, the police officer driving the car, and also, you know, colleagues in the car. We forget about those people as well, just going out to do their jobs and end up in a very tragic situation like that. Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
OK, coming up next, I'll be speaking to Elan Dala, the father of a hostage still perishing in Gaza, for his reaction to the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Of course, Sinwar was killed by the IDF in pretty dramatic fashion, actually. That footage, which we'll show you very shortly, the drone footage showing Sinwar just sat in his chair in Gaza, throwing, in his last act of defiance, a stick at the drone that was monitoring him before being, quite frankly, blown to pieces by a tank. It's being celebrated across Israel as we speak. Will it mark the end, or the beginning of the end at least, of this war across the Middle East? I'm Ben Leo, covering for Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You could, if you're getting a bit bored later on and you've got some free time, tune in to Friends. Remember that?
It's on somewhere in the world all the time.
Probably one of those
incredible.
Obscure TV channels.
It's a big anniversary today, because apparently today was 30 years ago, was when it first hit the screens.
In 1994. Just before, or just after I was born, 89 me. The show ran for 10 series, becoming one of the most popular sitcoms of all time, and it scored numerous accolades, including 62 Primetime Emmy nominations. Joining us now in the studio to talk everything Friends and the big anniversary is showbiz reporter Steph Tetchy and my friend as well.
Happy Friends-iversary, guys. Yes, today is quite a monumental day for one of the most incredible sitcoms to ever hit our TV screens.
That it's on somewhere in the world.
There's millions of people around the world who are watching reruns, watching either streaming of Friends, and it doesn't get boring for people. I think, 30 years later, just that, it's such a simple concept. 6 New Yorkers just following their lives and their friendships. It proved a hit with loads of viewers worldwide.
The casting was superb.
It was so incredible. And the thing is, these were all fresh faces at the time. It wasn't like they picked, people who were at the top of the game then. And I think it was such a hit with viewers is because they became our friends as well over the years. But obviously today is played with a bit of poignancy because, there is one friend that is missing. And the creators of the show, Martha Kaufman and David Crane, saying that today is a bit fraught for both the cast because of Matthew Perry's passing. And he was known as one of the funniest friends, as most people would describe him as. And so today is kind of marred with sadness.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hello, welcome back. It's 5:23. Ben Leo in for Martin Daubney this afternoon, only on GB News. Now, the mastermind of the October 7th attacks on Israel, Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, has been killed in a drone attack in Gaza. Israeli footage shown here, and it's dramatic to say the least, appears to show the moments before his death, with Sinwar sitting injured amongst the rubble in a chair. And in his last defiant act, he picks up a stick, which you'll see very shortly, and throws it at the Israeli drone monitoring him. So, will his death affect the situation for the remaining hostages? I'm joined now by Elan Dala, father of the Israeli hostage Guy Dala, who was taken by Hamas from the Supernova Music Festival when he was just 22 years old last year. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. Pleasure to speak with you. First of all, your reaction, please, to the death of Yahya Sinwar, who arguably is to blame for your son now still being held captive in Gaza.
Yes, Yahya Sinwar was a bitter enemy of us, and he was the mastermind behind October 7. And now, when he's dead, maybe there is a chance to finish the war and make some kind of an agreement so the hostages will come back and both Israelis and Palestinians could finally live in peace and not go every few years in this round of kidnapping people, and then Israel go into Gaza and destroying it. They can't win. They must understand that they should live with us in peace, not in war.
Yeah, Elan, I'm so sorry to hear about the predicament you're in as your poor boy's father. When was the last time you heard of his situation? Have you heard that he's, well, first of all, roughly where he is, but second of all, how's he getting on? Have you had any intelligence from anybody from the IDF?
Last time was 5 months ago when we heard that he is alive, but since then we heard nothing because we know that after the last rescue of the IDF of the 4 hostages, they were put down to the tunnels, and since then the intelligence kind of lost contact.
And how does that affect you, Elan, as a father? What's your life like as you wait just for news or to hear from your son, even third-party news? What's life like?
It's the most difficult thing in the world. Just hell each day. We still live the same day. We still see his face in captivity. We saw a video of him that was released by Hamas. When we see him in a dark room in Gaza, frightened and in shock, and these images are haunting us day and night. We are very worried for him. We don't know what's going on with him right now, and we don't know anything, actually.
Yeah, we just saw a picture there of your son, Guy, on the screen. Of course, you're wearing a T-shirt bearing his face. How do you want this war to end, Elan? How do you see it ending? Not least with the release of the hostages, but what's the final solution? Are you happy for a two-state solution? Where do you see this going?
Well, I think that Israel and Palestinians should live together side by side. Palestinians only have benefit to gain from the peace with Israel. The war will lead them to nowhere. It's a war that is going on 75 years, must come to an end. And I think that if the international community will try to convince Hamas to lay down its weapon, there will be peace tomorrow morning. This is all we want. I believe that most of the Gazans just want to raise the family in peace, just like Israeli, and enough with the war.
Elan, are you still hopeful in your heart of hearts that you'll see your sweetheart boy again one day?
I have no options, just to stay optimistic and keep believing that he will come back to me. I saw him getting into Gaza well and alive in one piece. Yes, he was afraid and in shock, but he wasn't wounded. And I want to believe that this is the way that it stayed until now. And until I didn't hear anything else, he's alive and he was coming back.
And tell me about your son, Elan. What did he do in Israel? Has he got siblings, brothers and sisters? Of course, you're his loving father. Yeah. His mother is there. What was life like for him in Israel?
Yes, he has a brother and a sister. He has a big brother that actually was with him at the music festival, and he survived, luckily. He has a little sister, and he is a musician. As you can see, he plays guitars. He likes football. He likes sports. He's like the Japanese culture. He actually learned to speak and write Japanese in order to go to Japan and make the big trip there. He was meant to be there on last April, but he couldn't make the trip, so his friends are waiting for him to come back and make the trip.
Gosh. And how old is his little sister?
His little sister is now 17. Her name is Gaia.
How is she taking it? This whole last year of agony and pain and mystery and, you know, questions that aren't being answered. How's she dealing with it? She's just a child.
Yeah, she is. She and Guy, my brother, actually, the three of them were very attached to each other. They love each other very, very much. They love to play and sing together. And she took it very hard. It took her some time to come back to herself and start functioning in life.
Elan, tell me how do you deal with this practically day by day? I mean, are you continuing to work? What does your everyday look like? Or are you campaigning full time to get your boy back? What's your life like?
Yes, me and my wife, we held 2 jobs before October 7th. I'm a computer programmer and a photographer, and my wife is a technician. And we had 2 jobs. Since then, we left everything and we're just 100% dedicated to bring Guy back. This is all we do. This is our life now. This is our mission to bring Guy back home.
Well, Elan, I pray for you and the other hostages, and indeed everyone across the Middle East, that we get this situation resolved. As a father of 2,
Thank you very much.
2 boys, I can't imagine the pain you're going through, and you're a very brave and courageous person for coming on here and speaking with us and carry on your life day by day whilst trying to fight to get your boy back. I really hope it happens. Please stay in contact with us and let us know what happens with it. And our thoughts and prayers are with you. Elan Dala, you're the father of Israeli hostage Guy Dala, who was taken by Hamas from the Supernova Festival last year, just 22 years old. And as his father said, he leaves, at the moment, a young sibling, 17-year-old sister. He was an everyday kid, as you'd expect to find across the Western world, loves his music,
Exactly.
A family man, an older brother. And it's easy to get lost in the numbers behind this tragedy, the deaths in each country, the number of hostages taken. There's so many hostages here because there's names behind them, there's stories, there's, characters and families attached to them. OK, I think he's gone. Thank you, Elan Dala. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. I pray for all the hostages still captive in Gaza. OK, more to come in the coming half an hour, including the Labour Party are set to send almost 100 members to the US to support Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, including one MP who's been there in the last couple of weeks, Ruth Cadbury, I think her name was. She's the MP for Brentford and Isleworth in London. Nigel Farage reckons, apart from it being election interfering, it's a bit diplomatically stupid, especially if Donald Trump does indeed win in a couple of weeks' time. So should the party currently in the UK government really be interfering in foreign elections? Let me know, gbnews.com/your say. First, though, your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Ben, thank you. It's 5:33. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is in Germany today, holding talks with Quad leaders. Sir Keir Starmer travelled to Berlin to meet with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, US President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron. They discussed developments in the Middle East and also the war in Ukraine. Mr Starmer also spoke out about domestic issues during the press conference. He told journalists Labour will keep their manifesto pledges in the upcoming budget.
In relation to our manifesto, we are going to keep our manifesto pledges as we go into that election. I've made that very clear. I'm not going to preempt the individual measures that will be outlined by the Chancellor in due course, but I make fully clear this is going to be a budget that will fix the foundations and rebuild our country. No Prime Minister or Chancellor ever preempts the measures that may or may not be in a budget. I'm afraid you'll just have to wait until the Chancellor lays that out in full. But the structure, if you like, the framework, is going to be to fix the foundations and to rebuild our country. Thank you very much.
Now, back in the UK, a former police detective has been jailed for 19 years for stealing cocaine from work to sell on the streets of Manchester. The court heard that Andrew Talbot took almost 4 kilograms of cocaine with a retail value of £400,000 from an evidence store and searched police systems for dealers to help him sell the drug. The 54-year-old, who worked for Greater Manchester Police's Serious Crime Division, was found guilty of misconduct in public office and supplying Class A drugs last month. Now, a heavily pregnant woman and her unborn baby have died after a collision with an unmarked police car in south-east London. The incident happened at around 6:15 last night. It's unclear if the police vehicle was responding to an emergency at the time, which is now a key focus of the ongoing investigation. 2 officers in the police car were taken to hospital but have since been discharged, and a road closure remains in place as inquiries continue. The Independent Office for Police Conduct is now appealing for witnesses as they investigate the circumstances surrounding the fatal collision. And North Korea has reportedly sent 1,500 special forces to Russia, where they're training to join the war. South Korea's spy agency says the troops have been given Russian uniforms, weapons and fake IDs. It's understood North Korea is also providing artillery, rockets and missiles to support Moscow. This comes after Ukraine's President Zelensky warned NATO that up to 10,000 North Koreans could soon be fighting on the front lines. The Kremlin has dismissed the reports as fake news. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3028 and €1,200. The price of gold is £2,084 and 93 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's closed the day at 8,358 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. For the rest of today, it's fine in the east, but turning wetter in the west, and it's increasingly windy, although not as windy as we're expecting on Sunday because of Storm Ashley. That's developing in the Atlantic at the moment, and it deepens rapidly as it heads towards the UK during Saturday and into Saturday night. Ahead of that, there's some strong winds across the west and northwest associated with a band of heavy rain that by evening ends up across western England and Wales. It also turns cloudy and damp overnight in the east of England, but the rain clears Scotland and Northern Ireland, where winds will fall lighter and temperatures will dip into the mid to low single figures. Elsewhere, a milder night to come because of the cloud and rain that we start the day with across the southeast, the Midlands, and eastern England. The rain heavy at times and fairly slow moving, so it's a bit of a damp start here. But for Wales and the southwest, as well as for parts of northern England, a brighter start to the day, some sunshine A patchy cloud around for Northern Ireland as well as Scotland, and a few showers starting to move in from the west. But eastern Scotland and the far north, largely clear skies. Now, it may take until the middle of the afternoon for eastern England to dry up and indeed brighten up. But elsewhere across the UK, once the rain's cleared through, it's sunny spells and a few showers. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England and Wales most likely to see those showers. But in between, with relatively light winds and some decent sunny spells, a pleasant enough day, even in the east of England, late afternoon once that rain clears. And any showers that do form will fade away overnight with clear spells, at least for the first half of Saturday night. Then Storm Ashley turns up, bringing the risk of considerable impacts, especially in the northwest of Scotland, with wind gusts of 80 miles an hour.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner with the latest. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, the inside lanes blocked off westbound from junction 27 to 26 towards the M606 south of Bradford, where a lorry's broken down. And in Northamptonshire, east of Northampton, a serious accident has closed the A45 between the Great Billing interchange and the Earls Barton turn-off. In central London, Regent Street is partly blocked southbound. A car has broken down between Little Portland Street and Margaret Street, causing queues in the area. And on the M25 heading out of Essex into Kent, there are long queues after a lorry broke down on the QE2 bridge. I can see on camera all lanes back open, but it's queuing back into Essex to the A127. And on the M3 in Hampshire, the two outside lanes are closed southbound from junction 11 to 12 towards Eastleigh following a multi-vehicle collision. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello, welcome back. 5:40, Ben Leo in for Martin Daubney this afternoon on GB News. Now, I absolutely love this story because the Labour Party will send almost 100 members to the United States to support the Democrat Party's presidential campaign. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, of course, running for the White House. Writing in a post on LinkedIn, which has now been removed, surprise, surprise, the head of operations at the Labour Party urged people to email if they wanted to join the campaign. But will this damage relations with the US? And, by the way, who's paying for it all? Joining me now to discuss this is former UKIP MP, and now Chief Exec at the Mississippi Centre for Public Policy, Douglas Carswell. Good afternoon, Douglas. Thank you for joining me. On one hand, I saw this story and I thought, OK, it's only Labour staffers and some activists. Not sure it's probably too good a look for the party as a whole. But then I discovered Ruth Cadbury, the Labour MP serving now in Brentwood and Isleworth, has been in America over the past couple of weeks campaigning for Harris and Walz, holding placards. This is a bit of a headache, isn't it, for Sir Keir Starmer?
I mean, it's extraordinarily presumptuous. America hasn't taken political direction from Britain since 1776. So it's extraordinarily presumptuous for people to presume to tell Americans how to vote. I mean, as a Brit living in America, I'm always very careful not to imply that I know how Americans should vote. It's also remarkably counterproductive. I mean, the idea of a bunch of Brits turning up on your doorstep in Pennsylvania or North Carolina and giving you lectures about who you should vote for, I can't think of anything more likely to be counterproductive. I can't imagine that swing voters would warm to that. But it's also remarkably foolish. Imagine if Trump were to win, and I think there's now a very good chance that he will. You have just, for very little gain, sent over 100 staffers who've had very little impact on the result. But what you have done is alienated a stroke the next president of the United States. I mean, Britain already has a decidedly underwhelming ambassador in Washington, Karen Pierce. I can't imagine that this is going to help Britain's standing in Washington. It's a remarkably foolish thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, you can remember, of course, Barack Obama in 2016 coming here and threatening us to go into the back of the trade queue over Brexit. So you can imagine how the Americans are feeling about it. Douglas, your old boss, Nigel Farage, called it diplomatically stupid doing this kind of thing. Because exactly as you said, if Trump wins, we're going to look like absolute fools.
I mean, I remember a generation ago when Bill Clinton was running, some idiot in the then Conservative government thought it would be a good idea to try to feed the Republicans some insider info on what Bill Clinton may or may not have got up to as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford. That went down incredibly badly, and I think everyone recognized that was a foolish thing to do. But to actually send 100 staffers to go to a swing state to try to get one party to win. I mean, one of the basic lessons of diplomacy is that you don't get involved in these things. And, you know, as a Brit living in America, I don't take sides in elections, partly because Americans resent it. Why should foreigners tell them how to vote? It's just wrong at so many levels.
OK, well, let's bring in former Labour spokesman James Matthewson now. James, you're not thinking of heading off to the States, are you?
I'm not, no, but I've been offered the opportunity previously with the Labour Party. Just not something I've ever taken up.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Who's organising these trips and who's paying for it?
The Labour Party.
You're telling me Labour are paying for their own MPs and activists to go to America to campaign for the Democrats, is that right?
No, so the organisations happen across the parties. So the Democrats do the same here. They send activists over here as well. They have the opportunity to come and intern to campaign, to learn how Brits campaign on the doorstep, and vice versa as well. Labour students tend to go across. MPs have gone across. People who've done it historically as well. But it's been happening for many, many years, and it's nothing new. And it's really
James, you just said Labour pay for it. Are Labour paying for this trip of 100 activists? And as I mentioned, Ruth Cadbury, the MP for Brentford and Isleworth, are they paying? Is the Labour Party paying for this trip, as far as you understand?
No, they're not sending them. You have to be able to pay for it yourself. You go across as an activist. The opportunity for things like accommodation that are offered by people connected to the Democrats. You know, people who've got like, oh, we'll put you up with such and such. This is nothing. This happens in every single political party in the Western world.
Well, I don't recall the Tories going over to America to campaign for Donald Trump. Nigel Farage.
They literally have a group. No, the Conservatives have a group with the Republicans, and they go across and do exactly the same thing.
OK, well, look, Nigel Farage, he's been criticised for supporting Donald Trump, but his point is that he's not the governing party.
That's great, isn't it? Nigel's always got one rule for himself. Here's the thing with Nigel. He's just been elected, right, 3 months ago, right, to his seat for the first time as an MP. In those 3 months, he's been to the USA 3 times. So what on earth is he on about? And those 3 times that he's been in the USA, he's been every single time to try and influence the election and support Donald Trump, you know, with his kind of...
Yeah, but James, he'd argue he's the humble MP. He's the humble MP for Clacton. He's not the party of governance. And at a time when there's an election going to be called in a couple of weeks, surely, James, you have to agree... Surely, James, you have to agree that it's not a good look for Sir Keir Starmer. Can you imagine David Lammy getting wind of this? Do you think he'd be pleased about it?
It's David Lammy knows about this. David Lammy studied in America and campaigned with the Democrats over there and learned to campaign.
Well, that says it all, then.
It's not new. It doesn't say it all, but it's a very common thing, and you're trying to make it sound like it's something new and something shocking. Frankly, it's nothing new to any political party, and frankly, the hypocrisy that we're talking about a Labour MP going across being shocking, but Nigel Farage going 3 times in 3 months to support.
Well, as I said, Nigel Farage isn't. He's a humble MP for Clacton and Reform, who have got 5 MPs. He's not the party in power. And if you'd like to, this is a challenge to you, James. If you can send me by email ben.leo@gbnews.uk, send me any example of a Tory going to America holding placards for Trump, door knocking and canvassing, I think it's outrageous.
Do you know why they're not doing it for Trump? Because the Conservative Party here can't get enough activists out on the doorstep for its own party, let alone to go and support the Republicans now. That's the situation.
Yeah, well, maybe Labour should concentrate on things back in the UK. If they're not robbing pensioners of their fuel allowance or going to Taylor Swift concerts or Arsenal matches or taxing the aspirational and not getting their priorities right.
It just seems like you're determined to try and paint this like an issue for the Labour Party when I've just told you Nigel Farage, your colleague and your pal, has done exactly the same thing. And why don't you have an issue with that?
All right, James, very last question. If it's not an issue and everything's fine and David Lammy's fine with it, absolutely nothing to see here, you know, akin to Chemical Alley of Baghdad, nothing's going on here, it's fine. If that's the case, James, why did this lady, this Labour activist, delete the post on LinkedIn?
because she got absolutely bombarded with messages from press officers and all sorts of people who all of a sudden were like, did you post that? Did this happen? What's happening? People freak out and people delete things. Of course they do. What they were doing was offering an opportunity that's been there for many political activists and will always be there for political activists. It's a very positive thing.
All right, James Mathewson, thank you for joining me. Appreciate it. Coming up next, we'll have more reaction from the death of former 1D star Liam Payne at 31, from radio DJ and TV presenter Neil Fox. I'm Ben Leo, in for Martin Daubney on GB News. Back in a tick.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Founded in 1990 in Knightsbridge in London, the Beverly Hills Bakery offers some of the finest American baked goods in the United Kingdom. Beverly Hills Bakery has delivered gifts to all the UK Prime Ministers of the last 20 years, with, I think, the exception of Sir Keir Starmer so far, and provided gifts for the royal family and for royal births. As we near the 35th anniversary of the bakery, I'm joined by the owner and head pastry chef, Rosa de Souza, and Manuel de Souza, who is the director of the Beverly Hills Bakery. How marvellous to see you both. Welcome to GB News.
Thank you for inviting us.
So, why has this formula worked? Why did London need a Beverly Hills Bakery?
What we do is we're a bakery, but underlying it's actually a gifting experience.
Right.
So this is an alternative to flowers. So in terms of concept, that has maintained its originality despite going on for 35 years. And in fact, what I do is I often ask myself, why is it going strong? To remind myself to focus on those things that we need to focus on.
So instead of sending a bunch of flowers, you send a beautiful box of cakes like that, or confection like that, complete with bunnies and so on.
Exactly. So you have the concept on the one hand, but you also need the quality of product that goes inside. And I think that's where Beverly Hills Bakery has got a great product.
And it's where Rosa comes in, isn't it?
Yes.
So when did you start to bake? Did you start to bake domestically in your home, and did it spread from there?
We started from home. My mother's baking, where we didn't have all the stoves and things like that. We baked on the charcoal, like the grease.
Yes.
And we started baking. I learned from my mother the baking.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, in the last few minutes, Simon Cowell has paid tribute on Instagram to Liam Payne, who died this week, saying he feels devastated, heartbroken and empty over the star's death at 31. Joining me now to discuss this is radio DJ and TV presenter Neil Fox, who appeared on Pop Idol as a judge alongside Cowell. Thanks for joining us, Neil. First of all, your reaction to Liam's tragic death, please. And also, does the music industry, his former label, maybe even Simon Cowell, have anything to answer for when it comes to looking after their stars?
Well, this is a real tragedy. A 31-year-old young man, he sadly lost his life, and we don't know quite the events around it or why this has happened, but it's devastating. He's a young guy. He was at his prime. He'd been in this incredible band, and he'd had this amazing success. And here we are, talking about his sad death in Buenos Aires. He'd been to see his former bandmate Niall in concert. Everything seemed to be pretty good. From some of the stuff I've seen that he was posting on Instagram, seemed in a pretty good place. But your question about whether the label and Simon Cowell has anything to answer for, I think we have to really put this in perspective and go, X Factor was 14 years ago, or when he was in X Factor. Since then, him and One Direction had this amazing success, incredible success. And, you can't in any way associate this with problems to do with X Factor. I mean, those are shows that are there for people that want to try and be famous. They want to try and have that go to see if they can make it. He did. He didn't win, of course, but One Direction became super successful. But it was a long time ago. You do have to say that he's got family, he's got friends, he's got a label, he's got management. There are lots of other people that maybe would have been more involved.
Neil, sorry to interject. We're fast running out of time, unfortunately. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate it. And thank you at home for joining me this afternoon. I'm back next week. Have a happy weekend.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. For the rest of today, it's fine in the east, but turning wetter in the west, and it's increasingly windy, although not as windy as we're expecting on Sunday because of Storm Ashley. That's developing in the Atlantic at the moment, and it deepens rapidly as it heads towards the UK during Saturday and into Saturday night. Ahead of that, there's some strong winds across the west and northwest associated with a band of heavy rain that by evening ends up across western England and Wales. It also turns cloudy and damp overnight in the east of England, but the rain clears Scotland and Northern Ireland, where winds will fall lighter and temperatures will dip into the mid to low single figures. Elsewhere, a milder night to come because of the cloud and rain that we start the day with across the southeast, the Midlands, and eastern England. The rain heavy at times and fairly slow moving, so it's a bit of a damp start here. But for Wales and the southwest, as well as for parts of northern England, a brighter start to the day, some sunshine, a patchy cloud around for Northern Ireland as well as Scotland, and a few showers starting to move in from the west. But eastern Scotland and the far north, largely clear skies. Now, it may take until the middle of the afternoon for eastern England to dry up and indeed brighten up. But elsewhere across the UK, once the rain's cleared through, it's sunny spells and a few showers. Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England and Wales most likely to see those showers. But in between, with relatively light winds and some decent sunny spells, a pleasant enough day, even in the east of England, late afternoon once that rain clears. And any showers that do form will fade away overnight with clear spells, at least for the first half of Saturday night. Then Storm Ashley turns up, bringing the risk of considerable impacts, especially in the northwest of Scotland, with wind gusts of 80 miles an hour.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays on the M6 heading south through the West Midlands at junction 10, the Wolverhampton and Walsall turn-off, of course. A lane's closed on the entry slip road. Recovery works underway, where a lorry's broken down with queues back towards the M54. On the M1 in Leicestershire, the inside lane's closed northbound at junction 24, the East Midlands airport turn-off, where a car's broken down, taking about a quarter of an hour to get through. In Northamptonshire, east of Northampton, a serious accident has closed the A45 from the Great Billing interchange through to the Earls Barton turn-off. Central London, Regent Street, partly blocked southbound, a car's broken down. On the M2 in Kent, the eastbound exit is closed at junction 7 at Brenley Corner for recovery work. And